on digital transformation beyond the COVID-19 pandemics. But before we are delivering and delving into the topic, I would like to give the floor to our technical moderator, Alina Gergut, who will provide the house rules of the meeting. Alina, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jaroslav. So, dear participants, thank you for joining this meeting. As you all know, my name is Alina, and I'll be the technical moderator for this meeting. So before starting the session, I would like to give some instruction on the Zoom platform. The meeting is entirely remote and held in a webinar format. You are invited to use the chat for any comments. You may also use the Q&A function to ask any questions you might have. My colleagues will be monitoring, and any comment or question may be read out if time allows. The meeting also benefits from live transcription and English-Russian interpretation. Please select the live transcription and your preferred language from the bottom bar of the Zoom interface. For speakers, please ensure that you have chosen the appropriate channel interpretation that corresponds to your spoken language when you would like to intervene. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube and Twitter. The recordings will be available on the website around 24 hours after the event. And every effort is being made to facilitate the smooth flow of this meeting. Thank you for your cooperation, and I wish you a successful meeting. Over to you, Mr. Jaroslav. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Alina. Dear ladies and gentlemen, during the COVID-19 pandemic, digital technology has become a lifeline for millions of people around the world and critical tool for mitigating the led to greater digital reliance and impacted the way policymakers, entrepreneurs, and professionals make decisions. Businesses move towards digital delivery of services and products. Individuals turn towards digital entertainment, communication platforms, and e-commerce. Schools moved to online learning and digital classrooms, and governments relied more and more on data on citizens, health and economic indicators to establish policies. In addition, countries with top connectivity infrastructure could mitigate up to half of the negative economic shock of the pandemics. This outcome is likely to stay in what we call the new normal, and the pandemic is only one driver of the current trends. Some other important drivers include continued economic development, demographic changes, climate responsibility, and social well-being. But to capitalize on this unique opportunity to accelerate digital revolution, many challenges need to be addressed. Over the last 5 years, we witnessed continuous growth in most of areas of the ICTs, information communication technologies, infrastructure, access, and use in Europe and CIS regions. The Europe region, covering 46 countries, leads globally on all ICT indicators, with 88% of households having internet access in 2020, and with about 82% of individuals using internet in the same year. But a greater and rural divides persist. In the CIS region, the percentage of individuals using the internet reached 82% at the end of 2021. However, there is still a persistent use gap where individuals are covered by the internet but not using it due to the lack of the affordability, relevant content, skills, and meaningful and qualitative access. The last year have exposed these divides and showed us the dramatic impact of being excluded from digital world. In addition to the divide in internet use and access, women are also underrepresented in the ICT employment sector. One of the main barriers to it is the stereotypes. This starts at the early age with the gender gap in science, technology, engineering, and math education, also called STEM. The lack of exposure to STEM education also leads to less technological literacy overall. If the involvement of women and girls in technology does not increase, digital products, services, and platforms that are being created will not address the needs of half of the population. For example, applications of platforms might not sufficiently address privacy issues or might expose sensitive information, which makes women vulnerable to harassment or violence. And this result is a vicious circle where digital inequality and gender inequality feed one another. ICTs are also crucial enabler of the learning process. Not only it helped to keep on providing education during the pandemic, but it can also enrich teaching by providing access to a wide range of quality content and supporting inclusion with assistive and adaptive technologies. But countries face multiple barriers in this regard. The unequal infrastructure in households and schools contributes to the digital divide, which mainly affects marginalized children. Dear ladies and gentlemen, in light of these trends, policy development focusing on digital inclusion, access, security, skills, and sustainability is becoming defining characteristic to reach the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This argument is also put forward by the UN Secretary General report on our common agenda, and he is at the center of the UN efforts to foster human-centered digital development. At the global level, the UN Secretary General roadmap on digital development set common calls to ensure meaningfully and inclusive connectivity for all, while mitigating potential negative impacts such as online risk and harms. At the European level, the ITU is pleased to co-chair together with colleagues from the UNECE and UN Digital Transformation Group and for Europe and Central Asia, which regroups expressions of 20 UN agencies with a range of expertise and experience. This group aims to provide a platform to work as one UN on the cross-cutting topic that is digital transformation. It aims to uplift the potential of each agency to widespread the role of ICTs as development enablers and that can facilitate the capabilities of countries to reach all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. ITU, within its capacity of the UN Special Agency for ICTs and Digital, will continue to implement projects, programs, and activities jointly with member states in line with regional initiatives for Europe and CIS region. These initiatives cover a wide range of topics, mirroring the needs of regions such as developing ICT infrastructure, building citizen-centric digital services, spurring a digital innovation ecosystem, fostering digital inclusion, or reinforcing cybersecurity. The World Telecommunication Development Conference, which will be held from 6 to 16 in June in Kigali, capital of Rwanda, will set our next round of priority areas for coming 4 years. In addition, it will be enriched by the inputs of youth and developing a special plan of action at the Generation Connect Global Youth Summit. To fast-track the commitments of the governments, businesses, and civil society and academic sectors towards advancing digital development, identifying areas of partnerships and collaboration, and mobilize new resources, the ITU has launched the Partner to Connect Digital Coalition, referred as the P2C, together with the UN Secretary General Envoy on Technology. P2C provides an action framework focusing on connecting people everywhere, empowering communities, building digital ecosystem, and incentivizing investment. And with this, I would like to call on all stakeholders of today's session to submit your pledge to foster SDG-focused digital transformation through the Partner to Connect pledging system. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to today's session. And before giving the floor to our first guest speaker, I would like to give the floor to my dear colleague, Elizabeth Turk, Director of Economic Cooperation and Trade of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, for her opening remarks. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Jaroslav, for the floor, for inviting me to be here with you today all, and for this really excellent opening remarks. You covered such a breadth of issues, and you closed with this very pertinent call for submitting a pledge. So it's my great pleasure to join you all here for a second set of opening remarks. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, heads of delegation, distinguished speakers, dear Jaroslav, dear Maria, dear colleagues. great pleasure to be here with you today at this side event on digital transformation beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we just heard, this side event is held in the context of the UNECE Regional Forum for Sustainable Development in 2022. Now, I'd really like to thank ITU, Jaroslav and Sarah for convening us. And at UNECE, we are very proud to co-lead with you this ITU and UNECE together, the UN Group for Digital Transformation in Europe and Central Asia. And here, my thanks also specifically go to Maria Rosaria Ceccarelli, the Chief of Section in UNECE, who is co-chairing that group together with you, Jaroslav. Now, looking at the group really aims to facilitate cooperation and collaboration across different UN agencies in the field of digital transformation. And for us at UNECE, that's really particularly relevant right now because our member states, our 56 member states, they have identified for the next Commission session, and that will only happen in 2023, the topic of digital and green transformations for sustainable development in the UNECE region. So I'm really delighted that our membership has recognized the importance of digitalization for also for sustainable development and the importance of the digital transformation. And I think that gives particular relevance also to the session we are having here today. Now, Jaroslav, you've already referred to the COVID pandemic, which now it began more than 2 years ago. It has really sunk the global economy into deep economic difficulties, and it continues to take an unprecedented toll on human health and life. But also the COVID pandemic has been really a driver for digitalization. And throughout or from the beginning of the first days of the pandemic, new technologies proved to be necessary and proved to be efficient for example, continuing to facilitate trade through paperless digital trade transactions, allowing to keep essential goods such as medicines flowing. And obviously also for all of us, digital technologies have proven essential as we moved to home working and to continue our operations like that. Now, today, after more than 2 years into the beginning of the pandemic, ICTs, they sort of form the backbone of much of the economy. E-commerce and digital trade, they are playing an ever-increasing important role. And they also help us find sustainable trade solutions. And I think that's really very interesting in today's session, that we try to zoom into some of these sustainable trade solutions and that we more broadly look at the role of ICTs for the sustainable development goals. And ICTs can really improve people's lives in fundamental ways and support the SDGs. Now we know that each regional forum looks at a specific set of SDGs and we see them on our virtual backgrounds. And to just flag briefly, for example, ICTs can definitely help advance progress on SDG 4, quality education, that has been very well documented throughout the crisis. The ICTs can help SDG 5 on gender equality. And Jaroslav, you've just also mentioned some of the challenges in this regard. The ICTs can definitely support SDG 14, life below water, and I'm proud to refer to the UNECE FLUX standard here, and also contribute to SDG 15, life on land. What we have seen is that emerging technologies, now be it 5G, big data, be it Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, together they have really provided us with many new solutions to support health, education, gender equality, and various sustainable development objectives. I would almost go so far as to say that ICTs can be a cross-cutting enabler for the SDGs. However, all of this is not so straightforward, and it's really important to look at some of the challenges. And again, Jaroslav, you've mentioned them so eloquently, and I would say one of them is really the digital divide. And clearly, we still have big differences in terms of accessibility to digital tools. And in some recent UNECE publications, we have sort of like also dived into this digital divide. And we see that on average, if we look at the UNECE region, connectivity internet access, and for example, as measured by the percentage of population using the internet, it's clearly evolving, it's clearly increasing. But that increase still marks some fundamental differences between countries, and I think it's all our joint endeavor to close these differences and narrow these differences. And I guess this is also for us, as different agencies in the UN, a real call for collaboration and for cooperation, and to join hands to bridge this digital divide, and to also address some of the other challenges, be it privacy, be it environmental rebound effect, and so forth. Now, let me turn briefly to what UNECE and what particularly the Economic Cooperation and Trade Division can contribute to all of this. In UNECE, we put great importance in promoting the digital agenda to realize the Sustainable Development Goals. And if we look at the contribution of economic cooperation and trade, this is really manifold. Like PPPs and infrastructure investment, what we are looking at is crucial, for example, to closing that digital infrastructure divide. Our work on innovation, including innovation policies, can really help harness the benefits of ICTs and new technologies. And clearly trade facilitation, and here I'm looking at Maria, trade facilitation can provide many, many benefits and benefit itself from advanced technologies, be it through facilitating trade, improving logistic chains, multimodal trade and transport connectivity, and so forth. Now, on the side of UNCFACT, the United Nations Center for Trade Facilitation and Electronic Business, I think there is also happening a great deal in terms of today's topic, and I'm proud to say that UNCFACT has developed over 40 recommendations and some 400 e-business standards since it has been established. And all these are instruments available globally, free of charge, and they can be used. Now, a few examples concretely in terms of contribution to the SDGs of UNCFACT. Clearly, our work on multimodal trade and transport reference data models is crucial here. But also, if we look a little bit more at the SDGs, for example, our contribution to SDG 14 through the UNECE Fishery Language for Universal Exchange, or FLUX, is crucial. Our contribution through the eCITES standard on the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. And I'm very pleased to have with us today a UNCFACT expert, Mr. Norbert Puffinger, who will speak concretely on that contribution of UNCFACT and some of the environmental dimensions of the SDGs. Now, I think there are many interactions, positive interactions between digitalization and the SDGs. And I think there is a lot of interesting things to be discussed today in this session. And with this, I would close my opening remarks, since I am delighted that this is happening today. I think we provide a very important contribution to different other international processes, as you, Jaroslav, have mentioned them before, and also to the UNECE Regional Forum. And I look forward to joining hands between the different agencies, together with our membership and with our experts, to taking that very important topic forward and to pooling our efforts to harnessing the benefits of the digital transformation for the Sustainable Development Goals. So many thanks again for having me here with you today. I wish you all fruitful deliberations, and special thanks also to Sarah and Charles for the very great preparation of all of this here today. Back to you, Jaroslav.
Thank you very much, dear Elisabeth. So ladies and gentlemen, today's session will be moderated by Ms. Natalia Mociu, Regional Director of the ITU Regional Office for Commonwealth of Independent States, and by Maria Rosaria Cesarelli, Chief of Trade Facilitation at the UNECE. But before passing on the floor to them, it's my great pleasure to introduce the first speaker of today's session, our ITU Youth Envoy of the Generation Connect Youth Group for Europe, Athena Vasilopoulos. Ms. Vasilopoulos will share with us the perspective of the youth concerning the future of digital societies and economies. The current youth generation, being the first generation of digital native, it is of utmost importance to include them in the policy discussion on this topic. This will also be the objective of the Generation Connect Global Youth Summit, that will be held in Rwanda, in Kigali, from the 2nd to 4th of June. Athena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yaroslav, for this short introduction. So hello, everyone. My name is Athena Vasilopoulos, and I'm happy to be here today as a representative of the ITU Generation Connect Europe Group. So in the light of the upcoming World Telecommunication Development Conference, the Europe Youth Group has worked hard to develop a youth declaration defining the regional priorities for Europe related to digital transformation for the next 4 years, but from a youth perspective. This declaration aimed to be taken into account by member states when reflecting on their digital agendas, and also address digital dimensions related to SDG 4, 5, 14, and 15. So regarding SDG 4, quality of education, we often talk about youth as digital natives who we assume know how to navigate the online ecosystem and have the necessary digital skills. But as pointed out by the research by Eurostat, we're reminded that 95% of those who access the internet daily do not inherently possess the skills for safe and effective use of digital technologies. And according to the same research, engagement is found to be often limited to entertainment and communication, with only 13% of youth engaging in programming activities. For this reason, the first point highlighted in the declaration, which also constitutes the first suggestion of policy action from the Europe Youth Group, is the importance of capacity development to help youth develop the necessary skills. And in that respect, we ask that the ITU facilitate a bottom-up multi-stakeholder advisory group to develop a digital skill curriculum and teaching guidelines to be rolled out across Europe for various educational institutions to ensure that youth develop the necessary skills to use technology effectively, but also safely. And I'd like to emphasize the word safely, as the lack of cybersecurity awareness is also one of our concerns. And from a cybersecurity perspective, humans are the weakest link, which also further emphasize the importance to act. Regarding SDG 5, gender equality, as we ask member states and other stakeholders to support youth in developing the necessary skills, we would also like to highlight the challenge of digital inclusion and efforts that need to be provided to ensure that underdeserved groups of people who may experience inclusion based on their age, gender, geographical location, socioeconomic status, or even language are included. And regarding gender specifically, the gender gap in digital skills is a pressing issue. Currently, only around 18.5% of the almost 8 million ICT specialists in Europe are women. And to respond to the growing demand for ICT and STEM skills, avoid a shortage of skills, and develop a balanced workforce, we ask you to ensure that digital inclusion, and more specifically gender equality, is being prioritized. Finally, regarding SDG 14 and 15, while emerging technologies offer indeed a tremendous potential in working towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals, these technologies also have an environmental impact that needs to be considered. And we as youth are already bearing the largest burden of climate inaction. And the way technologies are managed can exacerbate the issue. So we ask you to consider environmental costs and make it count as much as monetary costs in your decisions. Overall, regarding this 3 points that I just mentioned, we are very concerned by all of this, and we ask you to be part of this decision-making process, namely as youth envoys like myself, to ensure that our concerns are highlighted. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Athena, for this inspiring word, which calls us to take action and even more, and to foster the meaningful engagement of the youth in the policy making, and the most important, in the implementation, fostering digital development. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to give the floor to our regional director for the from the CIS states, Ms. Natalia Mociu, for the moderation of the session. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yaroslav, and thank you to Elizabeth as well for the warm welcome of our session today. And to be inclusive language-wise and make use of the interpretation that we have today, I would switch to Russian language and invite you to use the channel that is more convenient for you. Спасибо большое, Ярослав. Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые друзья, меня зовут Наталья Мочу, я являюсь региональным директором Международного союза электросвязи для региона СНГ, и для меня большая честь, большая радость модерировать сегодняшнюю сессию совместно с нашими коллегами из Европейской экономической комиссии, с которыми мы плотно работаем в рамках нашей группы по цифровой трансформации. Наша сегодняшняя сессия, первая сессия, будет посвящена роли ИКТ и цифровым аспектам достижения цели устойчивого развития 4, обеспечения всеохватного и справедливого качественного образования и поощрения возможности обучения на протяжении всей жизни для всех. Я хотела бы поприветствовать наших сегодняшних выступающих в рамках данного сегмента. Это госпожа Алгетта Доно из Албании, господин Талант Султанов из Кыргызстана и госпожа Анна Миковская-Ралева из Северной Македонии. Во время нашей дискуссии я также хотела бы пригласить всех участников задавать ваши вопросы, комментарии, писать в чат. И в конце нашего сегмента, если у нас останется время, мы постараемся озвучить или задать эти вопросы нашим выступающим. Уважаемые дамы и господа, уважаемые коллеги, мы все прекрасно знаем, что образование закладывает основу для улучшения уровня жизни людей и играет ключевую роль в обеспечении выхода из нищеты. И за последние десятилетия в сфере расширения доступа к образованию, увеличения охвата школьным обучением на всех уровнях были достигнуты значительные успехи. Однако в результате пандемии COVID-19 в подавляющем большинстве стран нашего региона были или полностью, или частично закрыты школы, что негативным образом сказалось на уровне образования. По данным, например, монитора ЮНЕСКО, по состоянию на конец февраля этого года ограничения в работе школ из-за пандемии сохранялись в еще как минимум трех странах нашего региона. Тем не менее, повсеместное внедрение дистанционного обучения стало такой новой нормой. Правительства всех наших стран принимают меры по адаптации законодательной базы, по внедрению цифровых образовательных платформ, цифровизации учебных материалов. И особенно актуальными стали вопросы ликвидации цифрового разрыва и обеспечения адекватного универсального подключения школ и обучения цифровым навыкам. И нам бы хотелось затронуть все эти аспекты в нашем сегодняшнем сегменте. Итак, давайте перейдем к нашей дискуссии, и я бы хотела представить нашего первого выступающего. Алгетта Доно представляет Национальное агентство по вопросам информационного общества Албании. Алгетта является также директором IT-департамента при Министерстве здравоохранения и социальной защиты и имеет прекрасный опыт управления крупными IT-проектами. Алгетта, опираясь на ваш опыт, как бы вы описали основные трудности и решения, связанные с обеспечением электронного управления системой образования и предоставления образования на дому, и как можно использовать потенциал цифровых технологий для обеспечения равенства в сфере образования? Поделитесь вашим мнением и вашим опытом. Алгетта, вам слово.
Hi everyone, it is a pleasure to participate in this event and to present the National Agency of Information Society and Albania's vision on digital skills and education. Albania is currently in the process of finalization of the 22-26 digital agenda, and one of the four pillars of this cross-cutting strategy is the e-learning and digital skills. Of course, this cross-cutting strategy aims to trace the path and stimulate investments in the key areas of advanced computing and data handling, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and of course, the advanced digital skills necessary to deploy them. As I said, with digital skills as one of the 4 pillars of the digital strategy, we are working on development of the skills for all citizens in order to be ready for the digital workplace. This will be achieved, of course, through a multi-directional plan that will develop the ecosystem as a whole, through opening of the boot camps and coding schools from one hand, to the establishment of technology education centers in the community to increase the digital literacy for all age groups, and of course, the introduction of coding as part of the curriculum from the first grade of elementary schools. I will start from this last one to elaborate a little bit more. With the increasing presence of technology in everyday life, coding has become one of the most important topics. And Albania is in the right moment to invest in technology that helps coding. The government will enable the new generation to be prepared for the basics of coding, as well as to code in a real environment without the difficulty of lack of technology. For this reason, we are working in 2 directions. We will include coding and ICT subject from the first grade of elementary school, bringing completely a new concept of teaching and this of course is a project in cooperation with the Ministry of Education, which we have set up a working group that will draft the new curriculum for this purpose. Coding games will be included in the pre-university education management system, which is a current system developed by NICE, which is being implemented throughout the country and that connects all the stakeholders in one place: teachers, students, parents, and various civic employees from the education system. The curriculum that we are designing includes block coding through interactive games to make the ICT class as attractive and interesting as possible for the pupils. Of course, the benefits of learning coding at an early age actually extend beyond the ICT. It helps children develop the critical thinking and problem-solving skills as well. We plan to pilot this project in this year in 100 schools and to extend it nationwide in the next year. For this reason, the investment in special laboratories is necessary as well. And this is the second direction that we are working on regarding digital skills and coding in schools. We will build smart labs starting with 100 curriculum pilot schools this year. And these smart labs will provide an interactive learning environment. We'll have smart boards to facilitate teaching by demonstrating live the solution of a coding exercise and better organizing information on the board through multimedia, videos, images, audio, and animations included. And of course, this will help also the teacher to make it more easy to let's say to explain and to help the children to exercise in all the coding games that they are going to be involved. Another area that we are going to focus, which is also part of the Albanian digital agenda, is to encourage coding for also for the job market. Our target is to have 10,000 coders by 2025. And this will be achieved through the model of boot camps and coding schools. We are working with the Ministry of Education also in this direction to find the right government mechanisms within this year to promote the ICT academies with a specific focus on all the fields and also the advanced one like cybersecurity expert, software tester, business analyst, also emerging technologies like AI, machine learning, blockchain, etc. Another direction that we are working, of course, is in our innovation hub tech space. We are building partnership to have more incubation programs and to help startups with the necessary programs and support that they need through having intensive trainings, workshops, and mentorings in order to raise them to the market potential. And as I said, from the beginning. The other direction that we are working is, of course, the establishment of technology education centers in the community in order to help the citizens throughout the country to increase the digital literacy for all age groups. Thank you very much. These were briefly our directions that we are working on advancing digital skills and increasing digital literacy in our country. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Алгета, за то, что вы с нами поделились вашим опытом, и отрадно отметить такой всеобъемлющий подход, который принят в Албании, который нацелен и на всех граждан, и на граждан всех возрастов, и такое большое внимание уделяется школьному образованию, начиная с самого начального уровня, которое позволит вырастить действительно поколение людей, которые будут ориентироваться в использовании технологий максимально просто и будут содействовать развитию национальной экономики тем самым. Поэтому спасибо большое за ваше выступление и за эту информацию, с которой вы с нами поделились. Я бы хотела перейти к нашему следующему спикеру. Это Талант Султанов, который представляет отделение интернет-сообщества в Кыргызстане. И Талант координирует проекты, в том числе в сельской местности, касающиеся построения общинных сетей для доступа к интернету, обучения цифровым навыкам, создания образовательных онлайн-платформ. Также Талант является членом многосторонней консультативной группы по управлению интернетом. И Талант, ваша организация делает очень много для обеспечения ликвидации цифрового разрыва в Кыргызстане, учитывая сложную географию и удаленные регионы в вашей стране. Поделитесь, пожалуйста, как, на ваш взгляд, цифровые технологии могут способствовать повышению качества образования, обеспечению равенства в сфере образования, и каков ваш опыт в этой работе. Талант, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Спасибо большое, Наталья, за очень такое доброе представление. По-моему, вы всю мою презентацию уже рассказали, но я чуть-чуть более детально расскажу. И на самом деле много чего хотелось бы поделиться, и если я вдруг не укладываюсь в график, пожалуйста, feel free to cut me off. Да? Но я хотел бы начать вот с вызовов, как раз господин Ярослав рассказал, и о вызовах для развивающих стран. И в Кыргызстане эти вызовы еще ярче представлены, потому что Кыргызстан – это, во-первых, не имеющая доступ к морю страна, это самая отдаленная от моря страна в мире, кстати. Это одна из самых горных стран в мире, 93% у нас горы, и, соответственно, прокладка интернет-кабеля и коннективити – это очень сложный процесс и дорогой становится. И, в-третьих, мы не очень большая страна, 6 миллионов населения, поэтому местный контент тоже развивать как бы становится чуть сложнее. Да? То есть, если ты знаешь английский или русский, конечно, намного больше контента, но на местном языке, кыргызском, на котором говорят все люди, которые живут в регионах Кыргызстана, это сложно. Но я хотел бы сказать, что вот кыргызское правительство очень активно стало как бы вот, помогать школам и ученикам и учителям во время пандемии, чтобы учебный процесс не прервался. У нас в стране около 2300 школ, и практически все школы за вот этот период пандемии были подключены к интернету Министерством образования и вот нашими крупными операторами, включая Кыргызтелеком. Однако около 40 школ в самых сложных и отдаленных участках Кыргызстана остались без интернета. И я просто хочу для иллюстрации привести, какая ситуация там была. Мы эти все школы посетили. Например, есть село Энгельчек, оно находится там, где вот 2 семитысячных пика, и это дом, где живут снежные барсы. Я вижу здесь у нас среди участников Кумар Клычев, он этот район очень хорошо знает, потому что он там национальные парки создавал, чтобы сохранить снежных барсов. И вот там во время пандемии школьникам пришлось уехать из этого села, потому что нету интернета, и они не могут продолжать обучение даже онлайн. И они уехали в близлежащие села. Есть другое село Козлой, там, потому что нет интернета, директору школы приходилось раз в неделю уезжать за 40 километров в ближайшее место, где есть интернет, скачивать материалы, которые нужны для обучения, и, приехав в школу, через проектор эти материалы представлять. Еще одно село было интересно тем, что мы думаем, что цифровизация помогает процессу, и она очень часто помогает, но иногда это усложняет процессы учителям, потому что если раньше учителя писали отчеты и могли там бумажным образом отправить, то теперь в селах, где нет интернета, им приходилось ехать куда-то раз, там, не знаю, месяц или где есть интернет, все эти отчеты писать, отправлять и потом возвращаться в свое село, где нет интернета. Это вот просто как бы, чтобы почувствовать, какая ситуация в селах, да, вот в отдаленных регионах. Что мы попытались сделать, чтобы решить эти проблемы в рамках Кыргызского интернет-общества? Первое, мы попытались принести, если нет интернета, то, может быть, мы можем принести так называемый интернет в коробке, интернет in the box. И вот мы вот эти все школы в 40 селах принесли интернет in the box devices. И что мы обнаружили? Вот контент, который мы туда загрузили, во-первых, его мало, да, на кыргызском языке. Во-вторых, когда его оцифровали, он очень тяжелый оказался. Конечно, если мы живем в больших городах, мы это не чувствуем, но если ты школьник в селе, где ты должен платить за интернет, и у тебя телефон переполнен, чтобы загрузить какую-то книжку, ты должен, во-первых, потратить свои деньги, а во-вторых, приходится стирать свои фотографии, твои любимые видео, чтобы образовательные материалы к себе загрузить. То есть это вот действительно такая сложная проблематика. И мы очень рады были в этом плане наладить сотрудничество с инициативой ГИГа, которая вот совместно реализуется вместе с ITU и UNICEF. И мы очень рады, что вот ГИГа выбрала Центральную Азию как одну из пилотных регионов, где можно испытать разные модели по подключению школ к интернету и по испытыванию как бы операционных моделей, чтобы вот это подключение было устойчивым. И мы вот надеемся в ближайшее время подготовить так называемую playbook, где опишем разные пути подключения школ к интернету и разные пути по обеспечению устойчивости. Позвольте, наверное, на этом пока остановиться, а потом, может быть, еще постараюсь добавить, если нужно. Спасибо, Наталья.
Спасибо большое, Талант. И мне кажется, вы обратили внимание на очень важные аспекты, имея опыт работы in the field, на месте, там, где действительно работают школы, учителя, ученики. И вот моменты, которые вы отметили, конечно, цифровизация дает множество возможностей, но при этом открывает те сложности, с которыми сталкиваются люди, действительно вот в таких странах, как Кыргызстан, где сложная география, где много удаленных регионов, и действительно Кыргызстан является такой в этом смысле уникальной страной в части удаления от моря и горной местности. И спасибо большое, что вы отметили ГИГу, которая ставит перед собой действительно задачу выявления каких-то новых возможностей подключения. Мне кажется, в Кыргызстане у нас должно получиться выявить те подходы и новые методы, которые позволят подключать к интернету школы даже в самых удаленных регионах, и ученикам не придется никуда уезжать. И еще один аспект доступности контента на национальном языке, на котором разговаривают дети в стране, тоже, мне кажется, очень важным. Талант, спасибо большое, что вы отметили такие точечные примеры и поделились своим опытом. Надеюсь, у нас будут интересные вопросы в части вот вашего опыта в том числе. Переходя далее, коллеги, я бы хотела пригласить еще одного нашего выступающего. Это из Скопье Анна Миковская-Ралева, которая является координатором проекта «Македонский центр гражданского образования» и также имеет богатый опыт в области анализа, оценки политик в области образования, гендерного равенства, прав человека. Анна, скажите, пожалуйста, по вашему мнению, какие возможности предоставляет цифровизация для укрепления системы образования, повышения его качества, и какие проблемы вы видите перед правительствами, а также какие меры они должны принять, чтобы образование отвечало высоким стандартам и содействовало вот такому справедливому инклюзивному преобразованию, цифровому развитию в нашем регионе. Анна, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Thank you, Natalia, and thank you to the previous speakers. Their presentations were very interesting, and congratulations on the important things they're doing in their countries, especially in Kyrgyzstan. When I compare my country, North Macedonia, which is rather small in territory and almost completely covered with internet, and we still face a lot of challenges. It is really interesting to hear how they overcome the challenges they face in their country, and we can really learn from each other's stories. So I'll start with the positive aspects of how my country tackled the COVID pandemic and the challenges it presented, and then go on to the challenges we faced and how they can be overcome in future. First, I have to say that while the COVID pandemic represented a shock to the education system, at the same time, it opened the systems to the possibilities of digitalization in education. And since the educational system went almost completely to distance learning, nationwide distance learning platform was established, connecting all schools in the country, and also additional platforms for digital education materials were developed and are still continuously filled with contents by teachers. Also, the national TV in the beginning of the pandemic was used to target groups of students with lack of access to internet. The overall crisis actually encouraged the Ministry of Education and Science to provide special focus on the digitalization in the newly developed policy of primary education concept, where the use of digital means in support of the education process were more specifically elaborated, and they were ensured in the relevant laws. And I believe that the general message has been received by the system that there is a necessity to collaborate with partners outside of the formal education system in order to quickly adapt to the changes. And this entailed joint plans and activities of the education institutions with the private sectors, the CSOs, the donor agencies, as well as parents as in the form of partners of the system. My organization, Macedonian Civic Education Center, also collaborated with the institutions in the development of instructional materials and capacity building of teachers for effective use of digital tools to achieve the learning goals. And although many stakeholders were involved in the process, some of the available studies showed that the end users, that is the students and the school staff, still feel that they were the least consulted party during the development of the measures, although their experiences were continuously surveyed from the system and from outside of the formal system by non-formal groups. And now let's go to the challenges. Still, despite of these efforts on behalf of the institutions and the overall community, we have still witnessed large digital inequalities in our country, starting from unequal coverage with digital infrastructure, access to technology, digital skills of teachers and school staff. Actually, last year, the Macedonian Ministry of Education and Science identified that about 15% of students do not have access to a digital device and internet in their families, and they are not in a position to provide this. So unfortunately, the national and local governments did not manage to provide equal access to the required tools for each child and adapt the policies to the needs of each community. Hence, the students, which were the least privileged when it comes, the students which were the least privileged, they faced challenges when it comes to following the everyday curriculum, but also when it comes to developing their digital skills. And although there are no official data with regards to the achievements, some anecdotal evidence shows that the already existing achievement gap between children with different socioeconomic status has widened during the pandemic. And this is, I think, an overall issue within the different countries. And this means the students who needed the most support were not adequately and sufficiently supported by the system. While there were attempts by some communities to overcome these deficiencies, they were remedial measures and were not systematically planned. And in the end, I would conclude with two recommendations. One refers to education quality, which must look at digitalization through the prism of quality instead of only quantity. This means that we should bear in mind that technology should not be used only for the sake of technology in education, but for the purpose of enhancing learning and better achievement of the learning goals. The technology should be perceived as a tool for enabling every child achieve the learning goals and attain the needed competencies. And this requires flexible and adaptive use of technology. Is not one size fits all. And the other conclusion refers to the role of digitalization in supporting equality. And this entails two factors, I believe. The first one is the necessity to implement the same standards for digital infrastructure in all schools, regardless of whether where they are located and the socioeconomic status of their students. And this policy has not been systematically developed and enforced in the country yet. And the second aspect refers to the teachers, as we know that with most education policies, skilled teachers are the key factor for education quality. So in-service and pre-service programs, which integrate digital tools and contents and the universal learning design as an approach to learning should be the next required steps. Because so far the capacity building activities for teachers have been mainly basic, refer to the technical aspects of technology use, but they neglected the methodological aspects, and this should be tackled in the future. So I believe these are the main steps that the systems must take to ensure that digitalization is used to support both education quality and reduce inequality in education. Thank you.
Анна, спасибо большое. И здорово, что вы закончили ваше выступление такими очень четкими рекомендациями, которые касаются повышения качества системы образования, и отметили важность повышения квалификации учителей как одной из важнейших мер достижения такого качества образования. Спасибо вам еще раз большое. Мы обязательно эти рекомендации еще внимательно рассмотрим. Я надеюсь, что наши коллеги из других организаций системы ООН тоже их отметят и учтут в своих программах. Уважаемые коллеги, Алгета, Таланта, Анна, спасибо вам большое. И я бы хотела задать еще один вопрос. Все вы отмечали в разной степени те или иные аспекты сотрудничества на различных уровнях. И мне бы хотелось увязать вот этот аспект с тем, что Ярослав отмечал в начале в своем выступлении, что в настоящее время и Международный союз электросвязи, понимая, осознавая важность сотрудничества, инициировал такую платформу Partner to Connect. Мне кажется, те примеры работ, которые вы реализуете в ваших странах, являются прекрасными примерами коммитментов, которые могут быть представлены на такой платформе, которую МСЭ сейчас развивает Partner to Connect, и мы бы хотели вас пригласить, в общем, включиться в это партнерство. И тем не менее, хотела бы еще раз задать один вопрос всем вам, очень коротко. Как, по вашему мнению, многосторонние партнерства могут способствовать развитию цифровых технологий и тем самым содействовать достижению целей устойчивого развития, в частности, в области образования? Вы, может быть, могли бы привести какие-то конкретные примеры успешных партнерств, в которых вы вовлечены, или предложений по тем партнерствам, которые вы считаете вы и ваши организации могли бы участвовать. Алгета, вот буквально 2 минуты. Поделитесь, пожалуйста, вашим видением важности партнерств. Да, Алгета, вам слово. Вижу вас на экране.
Yes. Yes, this is a very good question, actually. The multi-stakeholder partnerships, of course, between government agencies, private companies, but also non-profit organizations, help not only to run things faster, but also help in developing the ecosystem as a whole, and thereby accelerate the achievement of all SDGs, especially in this case that we are talking about digital skills. Because as I said also in the presentation, in the case of Albania, we are working in multi-directional elements to enhance the ecosystem as a whole in this direction. Of course, throughout the years, we have had some very successful collaboration in this area. Since we are talking with digital skills, we have the support of nonprofit organizations. Of course, we have worked in close collaboration. We are working with the Ministry of Education. With the nonprofit organizations, we have worked for our tech space, which is our innovation hub, for different incubation programs. And of course, they're also supporting us right now with the ICT curricula and smart labs. So building partnerships helps not only in the development and accelerating the processes. Financing also is very important, but also helps in bringing the best experiences, because sometimes these partners has implemented successful projects in other countries and bring up their experience and expertise also in our collaborations. So we see it as very important, and we are always trying to include all the necessary stakeholders in developing our ICT agenda. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Алгета. Талант. Вы упоминали уже инициативу МСА и ЮНИСЕФ ГИГА, в которой вы тоже участвуете. Какие еще возможные партнерства вы видите и их роль?
Вот эта инициатива, которую я отметил с ГИГа, она очень большие перспективы несет, я думаю, для наших стран. И, конечно, партнеры, с кем мы общаемся, как бы в очень большом ожидании. И мы хотели бы вот это сотрудничество выстроить не только как двустороннее, где ГИГа и интернет-общество, а на самом деле будет много вовлеченных участников. И вот, например, мы реализовали один проект в селе Сусамыр, Community Network, и это такой партнерство получилось, где вовлечено и государство центральное, как Министерство образования, также и муниципалитет местный, где школа выступила как вот хозяин вот этой инфраструктуры. Был вовлечен международный партнер, который нам дал ноу-хау и финансирование. И, что очень важно, частный сектор тоже был вовлечен для того, чтобы вот этот проект получил такую устойчивость. И сейчас вот на уровне села была создана специальная некоммерческая организация, которая управляет вот этой общинной интернет-сетью, напрямую ведет переговоры с частным сектором, с провайдером, который дает как бы такой corporate social responsibility в это село, чтобы и школа, и больница, и муниципалитет могли иметь доступ к недорогому и качественному интернету. И вот этот пример мы хотим как бы попробовать и в других местах, чтобы это было частью нашего вот этого плейбука, с которым мы хотим поделиться со всеми партнерами и со всем миром. Спасибо, Наталья.
Спасибо большое, Талант. Анна, какова ваша перспектива? Какое ваше видение?
Well, I'm going to speak more generally about how we should develop the overall digital competence of the youth today so they can adjust to the world of tomorrow. As we know, the digital competencies emphasizes one of the 8 key competencies for lifelong learning. but however, its definition is constantly changing because what was considered to be digital literacy 20 years ago has now changed significantly and involves more and more complex skills which are necessary for the future. So the education system needs to be very fast in adapting to the changes. And for district, in order to do this, it needs to partner with different types of stakeholders, because the formal education system is usually slow to adapt to the changes. So it needs support by the overall skills development ecosystem in the country and outside of the country. And this includes non-formal education institutions who are more adaptable to the digital transformation needs, civil sector organizations which have access to different funds which can be used in synergy with the budget funds. And also bigger emphasis should be put in the schools on extracurricular activities, because the extracurricular contents are more easily adaptable and flexible. So this requires systematic mapping of all stakeholders according to their line of work, planning of the involvement of each. And I believe that the general development of the digital competence will affect in the overall digital development and achievement of other sustainable development goals, not only quality of education, but in general the whole system.
Анна, спасибо большое. И вы тоже затронули важные аспекты, связанные с постоянной эволюцией и развитием технологий и необходимости отвечать новым возможностям, которые предоставляют цифровые технологии, и развивать систему образования для того, чтобы можно было полноценно этими возможностностями пользоваться. Уважаемые спикеры наши, Алгета, Анна, Талант, я хотела вас поблагодарить за вот наш сегмент и такую живую, актуальную дискуссию. Несмотря на то, что у нас идет снег за окошком, мне кажется, наше обсуждение сегодня оказалось очень предметным, очень наполненным вашим реальным опытом, и вы затронули все аспекты, касающиеся достижения качественного образования, которые включают и развитие системы образования как таковой, через Министерство образования, через школу, учителей, учеников, создание соответствующего контента, в том числе на национальных языках, и сложности, которые мы видим на этом пути, так и важность качественного и доступного подключения и доступа к интернету. И мы увидели некоторые примеры того, с какими сложностями страны в нашем регионе сталкиваются с такими, казалось бы, базовой вещью, как подключение к интернету, к которому мы все уже сегодня привыкли. И, конечно же, отрадно отметить, что для достижения качественного образования и цели устойчивого развития, посвященной этому, все вы отметили важность партнерств разнообразных, как на уровне самого государства, между правительственными структурами, между неправительственными организациями, частным сектором, что позволяет обеспечить такую всеобъемлющую устойчивую систему качественного образования. И также отметили примеры многостороннего международного партнерства, такие как инициатива ГИГА, такие как платформа Partner to Connect, которую реализует Международное агентство ООН. И мне кажется, нам всем нужно знать и рассказывать и делиться опытом и информацией о существующих партнерствах для того, чтобы страны могли пользоваться теми возможностями, которые есть на платформах агентства ООН. Спасибо вам еще раз большое за такую интенсивную, интересную дискуссию. И по времени я вижу, что мы как раз даже немножечко перешли, буквально немножко, за таймлайн нашего сегмента. Спасибо большое. Я бы хотела плавно перейти к нашему следующему сегменту, который будет посвящен не менее интересной и важной теме, касающейся гендерного равенства. И я бы хотела сразу пригласить на условно-виртуальную сцену наших спикеров. Это Марьяна Петрович, это Мариам Торосян, Бояна Зорик. И, насколько я понимаю, у нас выступающий Джордж Энтони Джианомис, который включится немножечко позже, если еще не включился. Уважаемые коллеги, давайте перейдем к нашему второму сегменту, который я продолжаю модерировать. И что бы мне хотелось отметить, предвосхищая нашу дискуссию. Конечно, проблема гендерного равенства в области доступа к цифровым технологиям в нашем регионе, как мы видим из статистики, стоит не так остро, как в других регионах мира. По доле пользователей интернета среди женщин европейская часть региона занимает лидирующие позиции в мире. При этом страны региона СНГ тоже демонстрируют хорошие показатели в части преодоления гендерного разрыва. Но вместе с тем уровень такого профессионального вовлечения женщин в сферу ИКТ, конечно же, оставляет желать лучшего. И сегодня была озвучена статистика, Афина тоже делилась цифрами вовлечения женщин в профессиональную сферу ИКТ. Еще немножко статистики добавлю. В среднем менее 1% девочек-подростков хотят стать профессионалами в области ИКТ по сравнению с 5% их сверстников молодых людей. И несмотря, конечно, на технологический прогресс и темпы цифровой трансформации, в обществе все еще есть некоторые такие стереотипы в отношении STEM-образования и IT-профессий. Мы видим, что уровень компьютерной грамотности среди женщин тоже есть куда ему развиваться. Поэтому мы бы хотели с участниками второго сегмента нашей панельной дискуссии обсудить роль как правительств, так и других заинтересованных сторон в преодолении тех сложностей, с которыми мы еще на сегодняшний день сталкиваемся, в обеспечении гендерного равенства в цифровом мире, и как эти задачи нам успешно всем вместе преодолеть. И я бы хотела представить первого нашего выступающего, Марьяну Петрович, которая является профессором кафедры менеджмента и экономики Белградского университета. Хотела бы отметить, что в 2011 году Марьяна защитила кандидатскую по теме моделирования политики в области телекоммуникаций в рамках процесса сравнительного анализа. И такой научный подход может привнести в нашу дискуссию. Марьяна, скажите, пожалуйста, по вашему мнению, имеются ли в наших руках, в руках в том числе правительств, такие действенные инструменты преодоления цифрового неравенства? И, конечно же, поделитесь вашим опытом академическим, так скажем, как вовлекать девушек в STEM-образование и в сферу ИКТ в целом. Марьяна, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Well, thank you, Natalie. Thank you for introducing me, and good afternoon to you all. It is a real pleasure to participate in this session and discuss such an important question, although I sincerely hope we get to the point where we don't have to anymore. So this is indeed a specific challenge for policymakers, since the question is still on the table, even in countries with high gender equality indicators and strong public policy instruments for rising the interest of girls in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I will share with you some findings from the analysis within Gender Equality Index that was and thematic focus, Digitalization, the Future of Work, published by European Institute of Gender Equality. And the same thematic focus was published in Serbia last year. So these these findings come also from this kind of analysis, and the situation is particularly pronounced in the field of ICT, as you already mentioned, which is why it is important, because this field is seen as the most prominent one in terms of employability, or simply put, getting a job, keeping a job, and building career nowadays. But the question is also delicate because the segregation path extends from education to labor market. You mentioned already that the interest of girls, young girls, is lower when it comes to these fields. But even those young women and girls that end up in this profession, choose this profession, are experiencing vertical segregation and even a gender pay gap. So the question is rather challenging, and what is needed is to have to establish some kind of balance between imposing and inducing interest here, because there is evidence that including STEM content through obligatory subjects may be counterproductive and lower interest, especially of girls. And this relates to the discussion we had on the quality of education, because one of the paths to follow is introducing STEM content through inter-subject competencies within something we call next generation learning concept, where the learner is in the center of the learning strategy, where we focus on personalized competence-based education. And I'm not just talking about formal education here, but also further training that is needed now to cope with the job automatization, computerization, and new forms of work on online platforms. So as already said in previous discussion, digital competencies are evolving, and they're already seen as transversal ones, as employability skills, regardless are we speaking about STEM sectors or any other job or profession. So when we have this personalized approach, we need to acknowledge some findings from the both thematic focus at European level and the one published in Serbia, that there is a need to incorporate also something called career guidance, self-confidence, and self-perception, if we really want to fix the numbers, not just by traditional, let's say, policy instruments we are using. So we need to have a more delicate approach here. Just simply put, it is about shifting focus from bringing girls and women to STEM to bringing STEM to girls and women. And it is aligned with the evolution of the digital divide, where we move from access to use to usability, although we know that access is still an issue for some marginalized groups, but we want to let's say shift our focus. We need to shift our focus to usability, how to exploit digital technologies in concrete fields of both education and works. We know that there is math anxiety, there is technology anxiety, whether we're talking about young people or young women or older women now working in service sector that are afraid of digitalization and that their job will be replaced by some algorithm. So in this sense, it is important to bring the topic around innovations, not just digitalization, and something that is maybe scaring young women today. So this will not only help to raise anxiety-free interest in formal education in these sectors, further training, but also will empower women to work to new forms of work in digital world. And I'm particularly speaking about gig economy, work on platforms, where the analysis show that some stereotypes are also evident. The women that work on platforms are more educated, but earn less And there are some challenging tasks here that need to be addressed in future. And this is the flexibility of work on the platform. It offers many opportunities, but it also poses some additional stress to women in terms of arranging and balancing between work, family, and other obligations. So also on platforms, we have something that is comes from the traditional labor market. When we say about ICT fields, even women that choose ICT will decide on database administration rather than programming, software development, and also on the work. When we come to the platform work, women also will rather choose to are more represented in translation, accounting, and etc., and much less in software development, which are the most paid jobs here. So I will just put a summary as a kind of summary and say that the analysis we had in this gender equality index and thematic focus say that we need a kind of sophisticated approach that will not be only about the importance of rising numbers of women in STEM sectors, but more seeing the digital competencies as something that is unique, that is present in any profession today in the labor market, and that we need to devise all our actions through the line of employability, not just employment in ICT sector, but employability. The equally important is to get the job, but also to keep it and build a successful career.
Марианна, спасибо большое. И вот исследование, о котором вы нам рассказали, если оно есть доступно, опубликовано, я приглашаю вас поделиться им в чате, чтобы мы могли на него посмотреть. И вы прекрасно резюмировали то, о чем вы уже говорили, поэтому я бы отметила следующее. Мне очень понравился ваш обновленный призыв принести STEM к девушкам и женщинам. Мне кажется, можно его принять за руководство к действию и использовать вот такой подход в привлечении большего количества девушек в эту интересную, захватывающую отрасль. И еще вы отметили подход поддержки или развития инноваций, а не просто цифровизации. Мне кажется, это тоже интересно, и в этом смысле это прекрасный переход к нашему второму спикеру, который уж точно не испугается ни инноваций, ни цифровых технологий. Это Мариам Тарасян из Армении, которая основала Институт высокоэффективных инноваций, который является основателем платформы SafeU и уже более 5 лет работает в технологических стартапах. Вот прекрасный пример девушки в ИКТ. Мариам является социальным предпринимателем с опытом в области права, прав человека, социальной антропологии и, мне кажется, имеет прекрасный опыт и знания для того, чтобы поделиться с нами своим видением и своим опытом. Мариам, скажите, пожалуйста, что, по вашему мнению, должны сделать мы для преодоления гендерного неравенства на вашем примере? С какими трудностями сталкивается девушка, которая решила создать свой стартап? Было бы интересно услышать ваш опыт в этом направлении. Ну и, конечно же, какие, может быть, государственные меры необходимы или вы считаете важными для того, которые могли бы содействовать преодолению цифрового гендерного неравенства и достижению такого паритета. Мариам, пожалуйста, приглашаю вас взять слово.
Спасибо, Natalia. Good afternoon, everyone. I will continue in English. So, as a founder of SafeU platform, which, by the way, was created during pandemic as another digital response to growing numbers of domestic violence and in general violence against women and girls, I should say that this pandemic, which is violence against women and girls, which is also second target for SDG 5, still with us, and it was with us even before pandemic, and it requires some joint action. And I think that innovation has a very important role to play here. And as we speak about governments, first thing that I would urge them, and what we are doing also with different governments that we're working with, as we're already active in 3 countries with SafeU platform. And by the way, it's very symbolic that the next country we are going to implement SafeU is going to be Rwanda. So we start with Kigali. Your destination is also seems to be Kigali. Yeah, and because when we were starting with SafeU, we're concentrating on prevention of violence against women through responding to violence against women through prevention, protection, and prosecution of cases. Because we also understand that it's violence against women is a major obstacle for women economic empowerment, where also the central role plays education. So we created this platform as a direct response to violence against women, but it also has components as a platform and mobile application in it to create educational community where women are also have access to information. And we saw that it's proven itself as a very successful application, especially for women in regions that are more underrepresented in education and in economy. And the other part of it is data-driven. So we're analyzing data as data science and machine learning together to understand what are the narratives, what are the concerns of women, growing interests, including STEAM, and how we can inform decision makers, as we're also working with ministries to implement, first of all, preventive mechanisms, if we talk about violence against women, but also have programs and policies in place that are adequate and needed. So it's more moving from policy making to to data-driven decision making in this field, which I will highlight as one of the most important things for governments. As to engaging more women and girls in STEAM, I think I would definitely agree that we need to talk more about innovation and creativity. And also I would add here also the format of social entrepreneurship and the social change that women can bring to this world of innovations and technologies. And here it's very important to create the synergies between those actors who are from civil society organizations who are kind of change makers, because they help us to change social and cultural norms that are unfortunately depriving women from being active participants of economy and tech industry. And from other point of view, the synergies we need to create between private sector, tech private sector, and startup ecosystem, so that we all can contribute from our side, because gender inequalities is such a sensitive subject, but it's also very general. So it requires a holistic approach to this issue. And also as a social entrepreneur in tech, and solo founder, I can say that yes, it is challenging to be an entrepreneur in the field, especially when it's a mission-driven, like social change, innovation, and being surrounded with men. usually who are more working for like commercial startups rather than doing something for social change. But it's also very important to play this role of role model for young girls, because it helps them to see that it's possible. And I see more and more startups, because I'm also mentoring a lot of startups to pursue this the same journey. So I would say that we need all actors here to be engaged and also look at the most vulnerable groups that are actually women and girls that are affected by violence, and how we can create this reciprocal thing from STEAM to these women, because this industry itself has a big, and academia has a big positive influence on this issue, because this culture, the startup ecosystem, tech industry, they come with already established culture where inequality is already on the table. So it has positive effects. So now we need also to bring these women to this sector. And I think in Armenia, we have more than 30% women in this sector, which is a big achievement for us. And it's continuous work done by different actors in the field. So, and the last thing that I would say to summarize, yes, data-driven policy making is crucial. Second is highlighting women's leadership in innovation and in technology should be another important step, because it will change social norms. Thank you.
Мариам, спасибо большое за вдохновляющее ваше выступление. И тот пример, который вы подаете в своей стране, и, надеюсь, скоро будете представлены в Руанде, действительно, мы с нетерпением ждем конференцию по развитию международного цивилизационной связи, которая состоится в Руанде в июне этого года. Я бы хотела пригласить и передать слово нашему следующему выступающему. Это Бояна Зорич, которая является старшим политическим аналитиком в Совете регионального сотрудничества и вот имеет такую региональную перспективу. Бояна координирует работу Совета по вопросу проведения опросов ежегодных общественного мнения «Балканский барометр», и в целом является координатором такого гендерного направления работы Совета. Бояна, поделитесь, пожалуйста, вашим видением, вашим мнением, какие препятствия есть принести STEM девушкам, как Марианна отметила в начале нашей дискуссии, и, конечно, какие меры вы принимаете или какие меры необходимо принять, по вашему мнению, для того, чтобы преодолеть существующие барьеры. Бояна, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Спасибо большое, Наталья, за вопросы и за приглашение. Let me start by congratulating you as organizers for setting up this really worthwhile discussion. It's not because gender equality between women and men is universal human right that it is important to discuss the implementation of SDGs that we are actually doing today, but because gender equality and women's economic empowerment through STEM and other disciplines is basically an essential element for the economic growth, for promoting social development, social entrepreneurship that our speakers talked about, but also enhancing business performance. And this is precisely the starting point that we in the Regional Cooperation Council took when we started dealing with gender-related perspectives. We started back in 2020 by joining efforts with UNDP and launched the Women's Economic Empowerment Framework for joint actions in the Western Balkans, as we saw the necessity to not only raise awareness on the importance of talking about women's and girls' inclusion in all societal spheres, including STEM, but we also understood that only with targeted actions, we are able to address existing structural deficiencies as they appear on the ground. So within this framework, we defined 5 key pillars to achieve, in the, of course, the long-term perspective, the goal of women's economic empowerment in the region, in the Western Balkans. One of it is promoting women's leadership and access to decent work, which is quite important. The second is bringing transformational changes to gender equality, both in private and public sectors, supporting and accelerating women's entrepreneurship, investing in care economy, as we know that the most of the burden actually fall on women, and equitable distribution of unpaid care work. And the last is basically bridging the gender digital divide in STEM careers. And this initiative that we took stems also from the Common Regional Market Action Plan that was endorsed at the highest political level by the Western Balkan leaders, as they also saw the necessity to encourage women to pursue entrepreneurial careers, to increase their participation in education and STEM careers, but also to take part in digital upskilling. Also to establish women entrepreneurs network and women-led innovation teams, which goes hand in hand with digital skills development. And last year, we made a breakthrough in our work in STEM with the launch of the regional network of women in STEM in the Western Balkans. With a joint effort with our international and regional partners, we are seeking to provide an enabling environment for young women and girls with adequate mechanisms, instruments, and tools to be able to compete with their male counterparts on equal terms. It means to attract, to recruit, and retain, which is very important, women in STEM majors at universities, but also fields in general, but to create also deeper STEM talent pool in the region and to bridge the gender digital skills divide in STEM disciplines, because they are pertinent, they are existent in the region, but also we see it as a more global development. And what we are now doing at the regional level is we are rolling out a wide regional campaign in STEM for STEM role models that will become operational from May to October this year, precisely to promote successful women as role models that then young girls can relate to and identify with. So we could encourage their increased participation in STEM fields and subsequently encourage them to possibly take on the STEM careers. And this, our program will be followed by mentoring and coaching programs to assist young girls to enter STEM fields, let's say, more smoothly, and to showcase good practices to embolden practitioners to introduce similar tools in their business and educational environment, not necessarily at the regional level, but we can start from a small scale local initiatives, and then we will be able to scale up at the regional level. When we talk about the situation in the Western Balkans, on average, there are more young women STEM students in graduates in the Western Balkans than in many, for instance, EU countries. But the share of women in STEM education is much lower compared to other fields. As an illustration, and following up to what colleague Mariana said, between 70% and 85% of graduates are women in health, less than 40% in agriculture, and only 20 to 30% in engineering. So that is basically the situation today. Not only that, as we see in the region, women have less experience than men when they start a business, and they're also less likely to borrow money for their business, which then subsequently leads them to earn 30 to 40% less than their male counterparts, which is really quite a huge gap. And having recognized that, and also talking at the regional level with a lot of women STEM practitioners, women entrepreneurs, we decided also to pursue more vigorously the women entrepreneurial segment as part of our regional framework. So we basically only recently launched the regional flora or mechanisms to gather women entrepreneurs in the region and to increase the knowledge and awareness about their role, but also to share knowledge among themselves, because what we see is that they're not as connected and they're not sometimes able to share their experience and very valuable advices of how to start business with, for instance, their counterparts in Serbia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in North Macedonia, etc. And one of the major issues that we are now facing in the region is female unemployment rate. last year, and also it was, of course, impacted by the COVID pandemic, but even prior to that, it was problematic. Unemployment female rate in the region was 15.6%, which, despite a positive growing trend that we observe, it remains more than double compared to the EU average. So basically, we really need to address this problem and to act. We as a Regional Cooperation Council, of course, we are facilitator and coordinator of different regional initiatives, and what we are trying to do really to gather people, gather practitioners, experts, decision makers to sit at one table and to discuss the challenges, to share best practices, and to see how to address them. And we are not talking only about local authorities, national administrations, but also civil society, NGOs, and other partners, international and regional ones, that would be able to come together and discuss how to address these issues. So I will stop here for her now, hoping that I've answered your question. Thank you.
Баяна, спасибо большое. Мы немножечко по времени запаздываем, так скажем, но я не хотела вас прерывать, потому что, мне кажется, те примеры инициативы, активностей и проектов, которые вы реализуете на региональном уровне для Балканского региона, являются очень интересными, и я надеюсь, что в результате дискуссии кто-то из присутствующих сегодня на наших сессиях заинтересуется, узнает больше информации, либо включится в ваши региональные сети для девушек, либо подумает о создании каких-то подобных продуктов для своего региона. И мне кажется, вся информация, которой вы поделились, исключительно интересная. Поэтому благодарю вас за такую наполненное и насыщенное выступление. И у нас остался еще один выступающий. Я надеюсь, что Энтони включился. Я видела, что он у нас был на связи. Энтони, вы с нами?
Yes, thank you.
Не буду повторять вопрос. Я думаю, вы прекрасно знаете тематику, которую мы обсуждаем. Какие меры необходимо принять? Как вы считаете, что нам нужно сделать, коллеги? До того, как, Энтони, я вам дам слово, позвольте, я вас все-таки представлю и прошу прощения. Энтони является Энтони Джанумис, если я правильно произнесла вашу фамилию, является профессором, доцентом кафедры универсального проектирования информационных и коммуникационных технологий в Осло-Мет. Энтони возглавляет и участвует в крупномасштабных исследовательских и инновационных проектах в более чем 17 странах. И я рада отметить, что Энтони участвует в том числе в мероприятиях Международного союза электросвязи по этой и другим тематикам. Энтони, пожалуйста, вам слово. Что вы считаете, что вы нам порекомендуете?
Thank you so much, Natalia. And thank you everybody for who is on the line here today. This is a very exciting opportunity for us to come together and to talk about these really critical issues. I want to move from kind of a broader discussion around pipeline issues when we talk about how women are raised, how they are educated, and how they become professionalized. And I want to talk to you about a different kind of pipeline. I joined the social media platform TikTok last year. And if you don't know TikTok, it's basically a social media platform where people post videos and you scroll through those videos and you enjoy watching people do funny and weird things. When I first joined the platform, you register your name, you put in a little bit of information, your gender, your age, and things like that. And the algorithm behind the social media platform then presents you with the types of content that people who are similar to your age and your gender would like. And of course, the first thing I was presented with was a whole bunch of sexualized content that used women and women's bodies to, I guess, entice me to continue to use the platform. And I faced a really important decision at that point. How do I handle what the algorithm has given me versus the kinds of content that I want to consume? And of course, the sexualized content was not why I joined TikTok. I wanted to find other people who were talking about the real substantive issues that I care about. So I scrolled through the first 10, 20, 30 videos, and I eventually got into areas that were discussing the research on issues around LGBT rights, around transgender rights, and around all the issues that we fundamentally care about when it comes to gender equality. Now, my experience could have taken a very different turn had I liked and subscribed to and just lingered long enough on other kinds of content. And this is the kind of pipeline I want to talk about, because there's been research specifically on TikTok, but it applies to almost every social media platform that uses an intelligent algorithm to determine what kind of content people like and enjoy. There's research that shows that people, especially young men, can become radicalized very, very quickly. And so there's a pipeline that exists that starts very innocuously. It might be some jokes at the expense of some celebrities. It might be some jokes about women and how they exist in the world. And then as you kind of interact with that content, a young man might be presented with content about how to pick up women or how to get a girlfriend. And then that slowly accelerates and it becomes more and more misogynistic until at some point in time, they become enveloped in full-on male misogynistic, male supremacy content. And so this pipeline is a pipeline of radicalizing young men into areas of society where women's rights are not only just not acknowledged, but they're actively oppressed. And this is an important pipeline for us to think about when we talk about issues around gender equality, because it's not on the women to make this world a more equal place. It's on all of our responsibilities. It's on all of our consciousnesses. And so the issues around men's roles in ensuring that gender equality exists in society is really important. And we can't take that, we can't leave that out of the equation when there are online platforms that are, the entire business models are geared towards extremist content. And so I wanted to start off just by talking about that, because it's really important for us to consider the ways in which we're approaching the issues of gender equality in our world. Gender equality is not something that only benefits women. It's something that benefits all of us, men included. Misogynistic attitudes, internalized misogynies, and toxic masculinities affect men in addition to affecting women. And so I think when we're approaching these issues around STEM pipelines, when we're approaching these issues around education and rights, we can't stop by saying, okay, we're seeing what the impact is having on women and on women's rights and leave it at that. We have to also take into account how men can be part of that equation, how men can also support us achieving the goal of gender equality. And I say this not just as an academic, I say this as a teacher, because I am tired of young women coming to my office and confiding in me the sorts of discrimination, the hostilities, the microaggressions, the outright harassment that they experience in educational settings and in professional settings. One of my earliest experiences as a scholar, as an academic, was when a young woman came to my office and she sat down and she seemed frustrated and exasperated. And I asked her, what's going on? Are you upset about your classes? What's going on? What's happening in your life? And she confided in me that she had just attended a conference. And at that conference, she was giving out her CV to the different people who were there advertising their jobs and their companies. And when she went to to ask for one representative's business card so that she could send him her CV, he said, yeah, I'll give you my business card if you give me your phone number. And so it's this sort of tit for tat, very subtle yet clearly misogynistic behaviors that exist in the world that continue even in a country like Norway, where we've achieved substantial strides in women's rights, that these issues still exist. I'll tell another story about when I was supervising a group of bachelor students. And these were 3 women who were doing work with an external vendor. And that vendor was selling medical supplies. And so he wanted a website created. He wanted these young professionals to create a website for him. and this was going to be graded as part of their final thesis. And at one of the meetings, he sat them down and he said, look, I've been working on this website for some time. Last year, I had a group of men working on it, but I really wanted a group of women because I think you'll be able to make the website prettier. And this kind of attitude undermined my students' basic abilities to create new technology in a way that's professional and in a way that's highly advanced. Just because he assumed that because they were women, they would be able to design a more aesthetic user interface. And this is just nonsense. So I want us to really think critically about how we approach gender equality in today's world. I want us to think really critically about the new ways in which misogyny and which toxic masculinity enter our society. And I want to call on all the men out there who are watching this series to stand up, especially when you see your colleagues say and do things that are impacting the lives of the women in our world. I think this is incredibly, incredibly important. Now, I have the honor of leading a high-scale research project called EU. It's an amazing project that brings together 25 countries around the world focused on gender-inclusive innovation. And we're working very hard to ensure that a new generation of young women are able to be elevated and to become the future leaders in this space. I'll wrap it up by just saying thank you again for this opportunity to talk about these issues, and I'm happy to discuss further.
Спасибо большое, Энтони. Мне кажется, вы дали нам тоже пищу для дальнейшего размышления над такими основными человеческими понятиями, как уважение, как культура, как образование наше. И действительно в достижении такого гендерного равноправия и равенства частью решения этой задачи должны в равной степени быть и мужчины, и женщины. И все должны понимать, осознавать, что без мужчин невозможно достичь баланса для женщин, и без женщин аналогично невозможно достичь баланса для мужчин, поэтому роль и поддержка, и участие парней и мужчин в этом смысле тоже очень важна, и спасибо за то, что вы затронули такие фундаментальные вещи в нашей этой дискуссии. Учитывая, что мы, опять же, немножечко отхватили время от следующего сегмента, уважаемые Марианна, уважаемая Бояна, уважаемая Мариам, уважаемый Энтони, я хотела бы вас искренне поблагодарить за такую вовлеченную дискуссию. Мне кажется, мы затронули различные аспекты и дали друг другу пищу для последующего размышления. Я хотела бы пригласить вас поделиться в чате какими-то ресурсами, которыми вы обладаете, для того, чтобы мы все могли с ними ознакомиться. Я надеюсь, что наша дискуссия стала также таким вдохновением и дала примеры того, что делается в разных странах, в разных уголках нашего региона, для того, чтобы достичь большей справедливости, больших равных возможностей для всех нас. Спасибо вам большое, и я хотела бы на этом завершить нашу интересную, важную дискуссию, пожелать всем вам, коллеги, больших успехов в том, что вы делаете, и с удовольствием передать слово моему ко-модератору, госпоже Марии Росарии Чикарелли из UNECE для продолжения модерирования нашего мероприятия. Мария, благодарю и передаю вам слово для дальнейшего ведения собрания. Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Natalia. It was very interesting to hear your speakers and your first conclusions. I'm now going to introduce the next two segments. So that there will be on SDG 14 and SDG 15. So let's start with the first one. And first, let me, sorry, I was already going inside the segment and I forgot to thank ITU and especially Yaroslav and Sarah for their great effort in the organization of this event, and of course Charles from my side, from UNECE side. So trying to catch up with the time. Let's start with this segment that is on SDG 14, Life Below Water. We will have two speakers for this panel. So Rudin Keayai and Manuel da Costa Cabral. And I will first of all introduce a little bit this SDG 14 and just participants, of course, are invited to put questions and remarks in the chat, and our speaker will try to address them. So SDG 14, Life Below Water, has the objective to save the life underwater, and it looks at conserving and sustainably using the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. This SDG focuses on reducing marine pollution, protecting and restoring ecosystems, reducing ocean acidification, developing sustainable fishing, and increase scientific knowledge, research, and technology for ocean health. World fish stock are being depleted by overfishing and illegal, unreporting, and unregulated fishing. And this threatens not only the fish stock, but also the coastal communities that rely on fishery for economic survival and depend on these for their food source. To address this problem, as Elizabeth highlighted in her opening speech, UNECE has developed an open and global standard that is called FLAGS to allow the electronic exchange of fishery data. And FLAGS provide an harmonized message standard that allows fishery management organization to automatically access the electronic data for fishing vessels. And here we see the link between ITC and our fishery stocks. And on this, sorry, I would like to introduce our first speakers that I'm sure will take over from me on this subject. So Mr. Rudin Keayai. Rudin has been working for more than 13 years as a civil servant in Albania, and where he is now in charge of the fisheries and aquaculture sector in the Ministry of Agriculture. Rudin expertise range from the development and preservation of blue economy, regeneration of the marine environment, food safety, and consumer protection, traceability of fisheries and aquaculture products, and sustainable fishery management strategies to reduce illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. So, if I may, my first question to Rudin will be, in our opinion, how can innovative ICT-based solution and emerging technologies support governments in mitigating environmental risk and challenges and use sustainably natural and earth resources and inter alia marine and terrestrial ecosystems? So, Rubin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello to everybody. As you mentioned in your intervention, I will focus my intervention in the fisheries sector, let's say on the fisheries resources exploitation in seas and oceans. And then, as you mentioned before, all enormous seas and oceans of the earth, the fisheries fisheries resources are overexploited. Now, let's say that the modern technologies, in the last years, modern technologies, digital technologies are put in place to make possible the control of fishing activities in a manner that would be not possible with traditional, let's say, control activities. Basically, there are two systems that contribute to, let's say, to control fishing activities and where and when they are happening, let's say, and they are the VMS, that is a vessel monitoring system for monitoring the activity of fishing vessels, as well as the use of and the monitoring of the fishing activities for vessels that are that are larger than 12 meters, and the other one is the ERS system, that is the electronic reporting system for recording and reporting data from fishing activities. These are basically the two main, let's say, electronic systems that help us to, in addition to physical inspections and control activities, these two systems help us to, let's say, to supervise the fishing activities in a manner that was not possible before with traditional control. In Albania, the VMS system, the vessel monitoring system, which is a satellite-based monitoring system, it is compulsory for all fishing vessels, as I mentioned before, greater than 12 meters, in order to ensure that the rules on which vessels can fish where and where are respected. Since in Albania, this system has started the installation of board of the fishing vessels since January 2021. And from May of 2021, it became fully functional. The other system, the ERS system, that is used to record, report, process, and store, and also to send data on catches and landings to the authorities, is still not in use in Albania. It is used in EU member states. We have, with our law, we have provided the basic legislation to start to implement even this other system in Albania. And now, for this year, we have programmed to approximate the Commission regulation of EU 1303 of 2007 that will allow us to make this system fully operational at maximum, we think, by the end of 2023, because it will, let's say, it will ask some time to become fully functional. The key element of this ERS system is the electronic logbook, where, as I mentioned before, the masters of the fishing vessel has to record and report all the data of the fishing activities to the authorities through electronic means, let's say, no more with paper that because until now not in EU member states, but in our countries, this is done by writing manual reports, and every master of vessel has 48 hours to submit to the authorities all the, let's say, the reports on the fishing activity. With this electronic logbook, let's say, it will be possible that authorities will have all the data and what is happening, all the reporting in let's say, in real time. So this is a way how let's say, digitalization and digitalization process can be used to ensure a sustainable level of exploitation of fish stocks in the seas and oceans. I don't know.
Thank you very much, Rudin, for telling us more on the implementation of ITC solution in Albania. And I've been in Albania several times, and I've seen how up to date you are and how willing you are to use new technologies. And I'm sure this will be a great success also, not only for the VMS that you have already implemented, but also for the ERS that you are now almost launching.
Yes.
Yes. So, of course, it's very important, especially for a little sea like the one, well, I'm Italian, so the one we share, you know, the Adriatic, to be sure that all our resources are not deployed. Yes, and we can keep them for the future generation. And of course, then we can support all the other countries doing the same to, you know, to have a better control over fishing and preserve our ecosystems. So with this, I think I will give for now the floor to our next speaker, Manuel da Costa Cabral, and I will come back to Robin later on. So now Manuel is a senior consultant for international connectivity and submarine cables in the General Directorate of Information and Innovation of ANACOM. And he was part of the Portuguese representative to ITU, where he has been the chair of ITU. And he was also a policy officer at the European Commission in DG Information, Society and Media. And Manuel, I would like to ask you our first question, if you allow me. I will ask you the same question that I just asked the previous speaker. How can innovative ICT-based solution and emerging technologies support government in mitigation and helping our ecosystem and avoiding that we have risk and challenging in our use of natural and earth resources? So, Manuel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria Rosaria, and thank you for all team that has been organizing this event, particularly Sarah, Yaroslav, Natalia. Thank you all for inviting me to participate in this regional forum. So, as you were saying, Maria Rosaria, it's very important also for us to be involved in these activities that allow in the future that our resources are kept and passed to the next generation, hopefully in good shape, that we are working on as well. So it's a pleasure to work in this, to be participating in this sustainable development event. Your question is very good because I am part of the Portuguese regulator for telecom, and how a Portuguese regulator gets involved in these activities related to the sea preservation and so on. Our start and the start of our activities actually began with a connectivity problem. We had to address the connectivity between Portugal mainland and our two islands, two archipelagos, Azores and Madeira. So this is a ring, an existing ring that has about 4,000 kilometers, connecting through submarine cables. And we are on the verge to replace this system, to build a new submarine cable system, a new generation with larger capacity and so on. And while we were in this process, we realized that we could add some innovative services, some innovative solutions to these submarine cable systems. And so we started to evaluate the possibility of adding smart components, meaning smart here means scientific monitoring and reliable telecommunication. And so we realized that telecom submarine cables can be used also for humanitarian purposes, such as environmental and seismic detection, service science communities, and people having in mind the production of early warnings in case of tsunamis and earthquakes with sufficient time lead to increase significantly disaster mitigation, saving injuries, lives, and property. Also, smart systems integrate scientific sensors that will enable both telecommunication and sensing functionalities for ocean and climate monitoring, including ocean bottom temperature, pressure, vibration, accelerometer, salinity. Well, then these the sensors, what these sensors read, it's very much up to the owner of the system, let's say, but we have a number of possibilities. We also enable these smart sensors to enable disaster warning, early warning and alerts for tsunamis and tentatively for earthquakes. This is very important that these sensors do not place a burden on telecommunication operation. So they are a complement to the connectivity purpose of the smart submarine cable. And so this is a good combination, it's our belief. This is an innovative process. There are some studies, some projects to have these smart functionalities in other submarine cables. But Portugal in this cam ring, what we call the cam ring, connecting continent as Portugal mainland, Azores and Madeira, can be one of the first in the world to have these smart functionalities. So based on this, we are able to produce an entire ecosystem of data processing, data storage of the storage of the data that we will be collecting from the bottom of the sea. And with this, we believe that we are contributing significantly for a blue economy. That is our intention as well with this process. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you for this very interesting piece of information. And I think it's great that you are using these. Well, you started from a problem, this connectivity problem, and you find solutions that are going behind the problem that you were supposed to address. So connect your two islands and finding a way to support the sustainable development of your coastline, trying to prevent an early warning and inform on time if there are a problem of earthquake or tsunami. And this is a very relevant point that, of course, could in the future, once that Portugal will have implemented it, could be exported to other regions of the world, not only of Europe. And I think this would be great. So with this, I would like to ask my two panelists another question. How can multi-stakeholder partnership support digital development and thereby accelerate the achievement of all SDGs? And if I can first address this question to Rudin. Rudin, the floor is yours.
Okay, I think that let's say that multi-stakeholders approach is important because it's not, let's say, at least in the fishing sector, it's not enough that only the authorities make their part, but also the, let's say, the other stakeholders, mainly from the business, do their part. They have to adapt their let's say vessels or aquaculture farms to the modern technologies in a way that the cooperation has to be in two ways. So the part has to have feedback from the, let's say, from the electronic system. So maybe the authorities, the governments, in some cases has to, let's say, to finance with some grants to support this digitalization of the private sector, because at least in the fishery sector, it's not so, let's say, so easy for the fishermen to make investments on their vessels. So otherwise, this is something that helps the authorities to have a better exploitation of the resources that let's see, in our planet is not are not so many, and quite everything is overexploited. So I think that this is the way how they. This is. I don't know if I have answered right to.
Yes, indeed. Yes, thank you, Rudin. And I think you're completely right, because you know, if I'm thinking about our fleets, you know, in Albania, but in Italy, but also, you know, in other countries, in a lot of cases they are formed of small vessels, so private owners, and they should these small SMEs should be preserved in order to avoid that they are taken over by large companies that can afford this IT system. Exactly. So I completely agree with you that there should be a partnership between the government and the private sector, especially to preserve SMEs in this sense. And thank you very much, Rudin. If I can ask the same question to Manuel.
Yes, thanks for the question, Zaria. So yeah, well, as we had this partnership on top of our agenda, first of all, to address the connectivity problem, then we articulated quite closely with the regional governments of Açores and Madeira and several ministries in Portugal, obviously, along with the operators. As for the smart cable, the smart sensors, let's say, as we were as I was referring before, this is an innovative process. So we created an internal, a domestic group consortium, let's say, being part of the meteorological organization, the national one, the Geophysical Institute, the Instituto de São Luís, and also the Institute of Telecommunications. So combining the several layers, let's say, the several areas which we will support with these smart cables. And in terms of, this is in terms of domestic partnerships. In terms of international partnerships, we have been closely working with JTF on smart cables. It's a joint task force which was promoted by ITU, UNESCO, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, and also the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization. And so these agencies are combining their forces in these JTF smart cables, and we are quite glad that the UN system as a whole is paying attention to smart cables and seeing the benefits of this new solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Manuel. And I think this is very much needed because early warning system have to go outside the country, you know, in this globalized world where we are, and we have seen with, you know, the latest tsunami, it can start in one country and then it can arrive, you know, farther to other countries far away from the initial point of the earthquake. So this international partnership, in my opinion, is really needed and it's very much welcome for all the community and also support ecosystems. So thank you very much. With this, I would like to thank my two speakers for this panel. And considering that we have some delays, I would like to pass to the next panel. I'm just going to check if there is any question in our chat. I don't see any question for the time being. So I will pass to the next panel. And thank you once again to Rudin and Manuel to be with us and discussing these very interesting topics. So our next segment, thank you. So our next segment, it will be and last segment will be on SDG 14. We are going to have three panelists for this segment. So we will have Shevela Korajacevic, Ingrid Take, Norbert Puffinger, that will tell us more on the implementation on ITC and SDG 15, life on land. SDG 15 wants to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, halt and diverse land degradation, and biodiversity loss. Main targets of the SDGs is, for example, ensuring conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of terrestrial and inland freshwater, promoting the implementation of sustainable management of all types of forest, and ensuring the conservation of mountain ecosystems, and promoting a sustainable use and management of waste. An example of what UNECE has been doing, linking ITC with this SDG 15, is to support the development of electronic permits information exchange, EPICs, and this to help the CITES Convention fighting illegal trade of wildlife. And this is helping ensuring that proper controls on international trade in animals and animals product will enable also the enforcement of strict sanitary standards, and therefore important steps to limiting the risk of zoonosis and the transmission of viruses from animal to humans. And this links us back to COVID-19, that is also part of the topic of this discussion. And with this, I would like to pass to our first speaker, that is Shevela Koryacevic. Sorry if I'm messing up on your name. Shevela is the head of Transport and Environment, Energy, and the Regional Statistics Department in the Agency of Statistics in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we are very pleased to have you here. And my question to you is, what are the effective policies or actions that governments can put in place to make digitization and digitalization processes green and sustainable? And Shevela, the word is yours. Sorry, I think you are muted. You have to unmute yourself. Thank you. I think it's fine now. No? No. Yes. Oh, we have a problem. Okay. Can you try again? No, you're muted.
I apologize. I think maybe she needs to disconnect and reconnect again. If it's you keep having this problem. Or try to disconnect the headset.
Shevela, can you try once again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. That's great. Thank you.
This problem.
So, yes, sometimes we have this.
Thank you very much, Maria. So, answer for your question. Proper management of waste is essential component of sustainable development. So there are a number of indicators of sustainable development goals specifically designed to monitor waste and the impact of chemical and waste on the environment and human health. Better understanding and more data on e-waste will also contribute to the achievement of several goals of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So, e-waste calculation tool is integral part of the methodologies for the calculation of weight of electrical and electronic equipment placed on the market and for calculation of the quantity of e-waste generated. Thanks to the cooperation with the Sustainable Cycles Program from the United Nations University Vice Rectorate in Europe, Bosnia and Herzegovina adopted e-waste calculation tool for the calculation of e-waste in the country. So, Agency for Statistics of Bosnia and Herzegovina successfully calculated national electrical and electronic equipment put on the market data in accordance with the requirements of the Directive of Europe Parliament and Council on waste electrical and electronic equipment. Additionally, total e-waste generated both in terms of total weight and per capita was calculated also. So, example of effective action at the national level to make digitalization and digitalization processes green and sustainable is cooperation between Agency for Statistics of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Federal Environmental Fund in Bosnia and Herzegovina. After Sustainable Cycle Program support was provided to the Agency for Statistics on e-calculation tool use. Waste Management Information System of Federal Fund for Environment in Bosnia and Herzegovina was put into operational use on the 1st January 2021.
What is important, that is Agency for Statistics of Bosnia and Herzegovina actively participate in the construction of information waste system. Statisticians, in fact, have access to data from waste information system for statistical purposes, as well as for international reporting, and this also includes monitoring of flows for electrical and electronic products which are entered into system by the e-operator, and comparison this data with import-export statistics data for e-products. And final, use of this data in e-waste calculation tool and calculation quantity of e-waste generated. So in general, this cooperation between these two institutions facilitates processes of waste information system development and enables comparison and control of data between these two institutions. It can be considered effective applied actions that make digitalization processes green and sustainable. So effective actions to make digitalization processes green and sustainable on the regional level can also be undertaken through a new project named Regional E-Waste Monitor for the Western Balkan countries. Project started at the beginning of this year, jointly implemented by the E2 Office for Europe, UNEP Europe Office and UNEP Vienna Program Office, and UNITAR Cycle Program. So this project aims to address this lack of internationally comparable e-waste statistics through assessing e-waste statistics, e-waste management practices, and e-waste legislation landscape in the Western Balkans to produce, finally, regional e-waste monitor, as well as providing training on how to make and collect e-waste statistics for the Western Balkan countries. So overall goal of this project is to assist beneficiary countries in making digitalization policies and strategies green and sustainable, as well as based on evidence, with a particular focus on e-waste management. To reach the project goals, Regional E-Waste Monitor for Western Balkans project will produce regional and nationally comparable e-waste statistics for the 5 Western Balkan countries, including this project. Using a widely accepted approach of UN partnership for measuring IKT for development and used for SDG monitoring, this data shall be intra-regional and internationally comparable. To this end, the project aims to improve both data quality and data availability, and in addition to increasing regional capacities to produce e-waste data and statistics for government officials, statisticians, and other relevant stakeholders, such as industry, essential for the sound environmental management of electronic waste. So, representatives of the Agency for Statistics are participating in this project, in this regional project, and we want to share our experience again by adapting the e-waste calculation tool for the calculation of e-waste in the country. So this is briefly from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shevela, for this very interesting piece of information. And it is, in fact, essential that countries work together, especially neighboring countries, in order to have the same approach on this problem of waste and managing it electronically. In this way, you can, of course, have a better cooperation and speed up the processes. So this is a very interesting project. And if Ingrid allow me, I would like now to give the floor to our other speaker, Norbert Puffinger, because he's also going to talk about e-waste. And it will be interesting to listen to him just after Shevela. So Norbert Puffinger, Norbert is an IT business analyst at the Environment Agency of Austria. He works on national and international e-government solution with a focus on interoperability, electronic data interchange, and standardization. He is a long-term contributor to the United Nations Center for Trade Facilitation that I manage, and and then he is the coordinator of the UN-CFACT environment domain. So if I can ask you, Norbert, how can innovative ICT-based solution and emerging technology support governments in mitigation environmental risk and challenges, and how sustainably use of natural and earth resources can be also preserved through these innovative ICT-based solutions? Please, Norbert.
Thank you, Maria, for the introduction and for the invitation to this interesting and important forum. Indeed, I want to talk about the management and the control procedures related to waste and to the transboundary movements of waste. And the technological solution I want to talk about is electronic data interchange, EDI. It's actually, compared to many of the other solutions we've heard today, not that innovative. It emerged in the 1970s, but nevertheless it can contribute a lot to an improved environmental management. Transboundary movements of waste, there is the Basel Convention since 1989, which defines the control procedures, and these control procedures, they involve business to administration data interchanges for each individual shipment of waste, involving data interchanges prior to the shipment and then after the shipment to track the waste, where it has been treated and when the treatment of waste has been completed, etc. So this is a whole lot of data to be exchanged very frequently, and EDI is very well suited, of course, for such live and real-time data flows. When I started working in the Environment Agency, the authority I worked for, the Ministry of Environment, it still handled all this information on paper. So economic operators would submit all this information on paper to the authority. There is a photograph from this from the competent authority where there are piles of paper in the background. It's not a stock photo, it's an actual photograph from the authority. And of course, EDI can help a lot to reduce the administrative burdens, both for the competent authorities and for the economic operators. So EDI in itself is, as I said, not such an innovative technology, but it's a building block and a starting point that can help apply lots of other innovative solutions. Examples are quite obvious. There are quite simple examples, sorry, such as formal validation rules. An example is there's those transboundary movements of hazardous waste. They need to be conducted under consent by competent authorities, and a formal validation rule can just check is the mass of the transport waste, doesn't it exceed the consented mass of waste? So that's a simple example of how the IT can support the competent authority in looking into the right places for assessing environmental risk. There are several other such means, the statistical means, so that authorities can quickly detect events that deviate a lot from the average. There are artificial intelligence means. For example, artificial intelligence can be used for risk classification. And of course, what's also very common is as we deal with large amounts of data, in order to cope with these large amounts of data, visualizations can help a lot, diagrams, etc. One main effect is that competent authorities are better in control of assessing the environmental risks and of taking actions if needed. But as said, another effect is that the administrative procedures become much more efficient, both for competent authorities and for economic operators. And using EDI is also an opportunity to introduce such live and real-time data interchange on a larger scale. If I look at the competent authority, it still deals a lot with annual reports from economic operators, but it is possible to increase the amount of live and real data via electronic data interchange.
Thank you very much, Norbert, for this interesting panoramic, and it was, I think, interesting to listen to you after Shevela, because we can have a kind of full picture of the application of ICT in e-waste. And of course, even if you are using ADI that is an old tools, that doesn't mean that is not applicable anymore. And from there, of course, we are jumping to AI that is implementing and is supplementing our tools at the moment. And I know that your project between Austria and Switzerland is very successful. So I hope this will be used in other countries soon. So with this, I go back to Dr. Ingrid Teich, and sorry for changing at the last moment the program. Ingrid is a biologist with a strong background in applied spatial statistics, and over the last 15 years, she's been working as a researcher in the field of ecology and evolution, and as a professor of biostatistics. She currently works in a geospatial and land degradation specialist for the World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies, where she supports countries to achieve their SDG targets. And we are very pleased to have you here. And my question to you will also be, how can innovative ICT-based solution can emerge and emerging technologies can support governments in mitigating environmental risk and challenges, and support the sustainable use of natural and earth resources inter alia, conserving marine and terrestrial ecosystems. Thank you very much, Ingrid, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria. Sorry. And first, I would like to thank ITU for organizing this event. Sorry. And FAO for nominating us to speak today. I'm really happy to present WOCAT's perspective and experience. We are a global network on sustainable land management. And we are talking about SDG 15, so land is at the center, and land is very important. It's the primary source of natural capital, and we derive a wide range of ecosystem services connected to food security, climate change, biodiversity, which are key to achieve all SDGs. Unfortunately, in the region and in the world, land degradation is threatening our livelihoods and health, and scaling out sustainable land management is key to reverse, reduce, and avoid land degradation. So how can new technologies and ICT-based solutions, so you were asking, Maria, can support the implementation and scaling out of these sustainable land management practices? And I would like to focus my answer on one of the most direct contributions, which is by facilitating transparent and easy access to geospatial information. Maps and spatial data are key for informed decisions. And these maps need to be, of course, relevant and validated, and can be used to prioritize, for example, areas for different types of interventions. The famous question that we have always is what to do where. They can support land use planning processes and optimize the investments, which is a huge concern for governments. And this is a time of opportunities for informed decisions. As our colleagues shared before, we have a massive amount of available data, for example, coming from Earth observations, But we also have new technologies and algorithms, data mining, machine learning, and to extract information from these massive data sets. And we also have easy access to high performance computing services to process these data sets. And there are also, as Norbert was saying, visualization is key. And when we talk about digital maps, we need to be able to look, to visualize, to explore these maps, and not being a GIS expert, not being an expert on the field. And there are many platforms and ways that facilitate this access and this visualization of the maps. So I would like to comment on an example. Last year, together with FAO, a decision support system was developed in Turkey and then upscaled to 17 countries in the region. And this decision support system was, its main objective was to support mapping of land degradation and monitoring progress towards SDG 15.3, which is a target related to land degradation neutrality, achieving a land degradation neutral world. And the system is basically a Google Earth Engine app and allows users and non-experts only by using a link to visualize, explore, obtain statistics, but most importantly also combine these different layers using multi-criteria assessments. So for example, they can decide which, they can use different variables, different criteria, where are the key biodiversity areas, where the area is degrading, the different land covers, etc. And choose and visualize areas that meet all these criteria. So I would like to point out that really, for example, these tools like Google Earth Engine are very useful to bring these new technologies to achieve SDG 15. GEE, Google Earth Engine, not only offers the possibility to build these apps, which are open, you can access the code, you can modify them, but it also allows to provides a data catalog of free geospatial data. So you can access all this massive data for free, and you can also process it in the cloud. And it's important also to mention that a key issue was data transparency and knowledge sharing. These were crucial for integrating and using available resources, particularly national indicators. In our experience, successful and sustainable use of these knowledge platforms and Earth observation data by decision makers, because that is always our end goal. We don't want to create tools and data that is not used. We want it to be used. This happens, this is successful only when there are long and medium-term processes that involve discussions, negotiations, feedback, and capacity development. And here, the science policy interface plays a very important role in these processes because it allows the exchange and joint construction of knowledge, which enriches decision-making. And following the principles of open science, not just any science, but open science, will accelerate and maximize the contribution of new technologies to achieve SDG 15. So transparency and collaborative production of fair data as in findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable are very important. And the COVID-19 pandemic has made it very evident and clear to all of us the importance of following these principles. I would also like to comment on another example of the power of new technologies to support achieving SDG 15. And as in WOCAT hosts the Global Sustainable Land Management Database, and many countries in the region have documented their practices, their technologies, and their approaches for sustainable land management. There are more than 300 practices documented in this global database from the region, using standardized tools and methods. And this has facilitated local, national, regional, and global knowledge sharing and comparative analysis of which good practices work where, how, and why, and what are their costs and benefits. So that's from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. This was very interesting. And you are completely right. We need to scale up land management and be sure that we are going to preserve our ecosystems, and geospatial information are key for governments and local and also national government to be able to come up with informal decision. Sometimes there could be things to control, but then if you can check the territories, as you were mentioning, using ITC and using, you were mentioning Google Earth, but I'm sure there are a lot of other systems, but these geospatial tools, it will be much easier for them to control their territories and manage carefully their resources. And I cannot agree more with you that we need standards for knowledge sharing, and data have to be interoperable, reusable, and accessible. And this is something that we do every day in CFACT. So you just open, this is an open door on my side. So if I can quickly ask the last question to you. Well, actually, Ingrid, you already replied to me on multi-stakeholder partnership and support on digital developments for SDGs. You mentioned all the wonderful work you are doing also with the project in Turkey and the country around it. I don't know if you want to add something before that I pass to the other two speakers on this.
No, yeah, basically in both examples, partnerships were key to support digital development and build synergies to achieve SDGs. And today, more than ever, we need stakeholders to partner up and share their knowledge, results and capitalize on the results of others, because the costs of not doing so are too high. So that's.
Thank you very much. And let's see if Shevela wants to add something on multi-stakeholder partnership and how they can support SDGs.
Okay, I will introduce you with the example of multi-stakeholder partnership. According to Waste Framework Directive, EU member states have obligation to set up electronic registries for hazardous waste, and are encouraged to set up electronic registries for other waste streams as well. So this position reflects broad-based shift towards the use digital platform to collect and report data across many sectors. To build an understanding of the use and the potential of these approaches for waste data management, European Environment Agency have initiated that project focused on electronic registries for waste. So as the first step, the European Environment Agency started with online survey to compile national information and generate insights into the use of electronic registries for waste data management across European Union member countries and also candidate countries. So survey covers background system information, user experience, challenges, opportunities for added value through enhanced analytics. So this multi-stakeholder partnership can be considered, I think, strongly as support digital development and this accelerating also achievement of sustainable development goals.
Thank you very much, Shevela. And Norbert, would you like to add something on this?
Yeah, I can just confirm and add that, yeah, in the topic I've been talking about, cross-border tracking of transboundary of waste, that's of course a cross-border topic, and it involves authorities and economic operators. It involves economic operators from different economic sectors. There are logistics operators which not only deal with waste, but also with various other types of transport. So interoperability is key to electronic data interchange, and for interoperability there is the need of these multi-stakeholder partnerships and of standardization, and I think UNCFACT is a good place for that. And also in this particular case that I've been talking about, it is also we are also working with the Basel Secretariat, so that there are recommendations for all Basel parties.
Thank you very much, Norbert, and thank you also to my other two speakers, Ingrid and Shevala. This was a very interesting discussion, and it's really interesting to see how the pieces are putting together and now they are interconnect, and how it's important to communicate and to interact among stakeholders and among countries. And with this, considering that 10 minutes delayed, I will give back the floor to Jaroslav Honten. Jaroslav, the floor is yours, and thank you to all my speakers.
Thank you very much for this great session and great moderation as well of this session. Sincere thanks for this, and congratulations to the distinguished speakers. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the participation during today's session. Let me express special thanks to our all those who have contributed to this session, also who have used the chat room in order to provide some insights and clarifications and additional pointers. I think we have got extremely rich content and reference point for further discussions and further collaboration, shedding the light on the critical role of digital and to accelerate the achievement of the SDG 4, 5, 15, 14, and 17. Being halfway through the 2030 agenda, it's important to capitalize on the role of the ICTs, but also address the barrier imposed by them to ensure that no one is left behind. We have series of different takeaways for each of the SDGs, and this makes us extremely happy, because those takeaways will be building the foundation of the inputs to the Regional Sustainable Development Forum happening next week, and we hope to see you all at the discussions and advocating for the power of the digital. But let us take a look at a few takeaways from the SDG 4 point of view, and also SDG 5 point of view and 17, and then I will hand over to our colleagues from UNECE. But before I'm diving into this, I wanted to still double check if we have with us the youth envoy from the CIS region. So I'm checking with Sarah. Sarah, do we have our colleague with us?
Yes, we have Emilia with us, who is youth envoy of the CIS youth group. So maybe we can give her the floor for some short
Fantastic.
remarks.
So Emilia, I'm handing over to you and looking forward to your inputs before we are concluding on all main takeaways. The voice of youth is very important to us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ярослав. Большое спасибо. Меня зовут Эмилия Волкова, я являюсь стажером в МСЭ. Спасибо большое всем спикерам за очень интересную дискуссию. Я бы хотела ее подытожить. Как уже отметили все спикеры, пандемия, вызванная COVID-19, продемонстрировала, что цифровой мир – неотъемлемая часть, охватывающая всю современную жизнь. И, конечно, образование не является исключением. Получение образования закладывает основу для улучшения социально-экономических условий жизни людей и играет ключевую роль в обеспечении выхода из нищеты. Отсутствие подключения к интернету или доступа к технологиям не должно влиять на качество образования. При эффективном использовании технологий могут в значительной степени способствовать обеспечению равенства в школах. Они устраняют барьеры на пути к учебным материалам, помогают учащимся в различных учебных контекстах и с различными потребностями. Так, например, одним из самых простых способов, с помощью которых технологии способствуют обеспечению справедливости в школах, является предоставление каждому учащемуся доступа к интернету. И тут я бы хотела отметить выступление Таланты Султанова и подчеркнуть, что даже удаленность школ, как было продемонстрировано в Казахстане и Кыргызстане, не является помехой для подключения школ к интернету, и с помощью инициативы ГИГа это было достигнуто. Что касается молодежи в целом, то здесь, как отметила Альгета Донна, государственные учреждения и неправительственные организации могут создавать все различные инициативы и формировать учебные центры, которые помогут в приобретении цифровых навыков и в их развитии, как, например, было сделано в Узбекистане. Кроме того, важно принять рекомендации, которые касаются повышения качества образования и повышения квалификации учителей, которыми с нами поделилась Анна Мяков-Королева, в каждой стране. Сейчас происходит повсеместная цифровизация образовательного сектора, и я считаю, что мы должны обеспечить, чтобы эта трансформация происходила инклюзивно, одновременно сдерживая волну растущего неравенства с помощью партнерств, как это было отмечено всеми спикерами. Что касается гендерного разрыва, то, как отметила Наталья Мочу, менее 1% девочек-подростков хотят стать профессионалами в области ИКТ по сравнению с 5% мальчиков, и меньше 20% женщин составляют рабочую силу в области STEM. Гендерный разрыв особенно велик в некоторых из самых быстрорастущих и самых высокооплачиваемых профессий будущего, таких как информатика и инженерия. Кроме того, как отметила Марианна Тарасян, остро стоит проблема насилия по отношению к женщинам, и ИКТ сыграют важную роль в ее решении, например, с помощью создания мобильных приложений и повышения осведомленности женщин. Гендерные стереотипы и культуры, в которых доминируют мужчины, все это факторы, которые провоцируют гендерный разрыв. И для того, чтобы преодолеть этот разрыв, я как представитель молодежи и, как отметила Марианна Петрович, считаю, что нужно предоставить девочкам и женщинам возможность развивать навыки и уверенность в себе, чтобы преуспеть в математике и естественных науках, обеспечить для девочек справедливое поощрение и возможности для получения образования. Например, возможно предоставление льгот для поступления в технические вузы, а также создание центров, обучающих женщин и девушек цифровым навыкам. Кроме того, важно содействовать созданию благоприятной рабочей среды, в том числе обеспечивать равную оплату труда и повышать осведомленность о том, что девочки и женщины способны так же, как и мальчики, и привлекать большее количество женщин к развитию карьеры в области STEM. И именно поэтому такие инициативы, как празднование Международного дня девушки в ИКТ, являются очень важными. Что касается ЦУР-14 и ЦУР-15, то, как отметил Рудин Кихаядж, использование ИКТ в водном секторе играет важную роль в улучшении водопользования и экосистем суши. Современные технологии, такие как система мониторинга судов, инновационные системы прокладки кабеля и ведение умных систем, как отметил Мануэль да Коста Кабрал, и системы отчетности, как подчеркнула Шивала Карайчевич, введение систем, способных сократить количество использования бумаги, по мнению Роберта Пуффингера, спутниковые изображения, искусственный интеллект и интернет вещей наряду с расширением покрытия мобильной широкополосной связи открывают новые возможности для поддержки правительств, организаций и сообществ в защите, восстановлении и содействии устойчивому использованию наземных и водных экосистем. Эти технологии могут значительно повысить эффективность, оперативность и действенность усилий по управлению природными ресурсами, которые способствуют устойчивому использованию природных ресурсов планеты на суше и в воде. Очень важно, как было продемонстрировано всеми спикерами, и я как посланник молодежи полностью с этим согласна, что государства, частные компании, все различные международные организации, стартапы должны заключать договора и партнерства и включать это все в государственные программы для решения проблем, с которыми сталкиваются данные ЦУР. И, как сказала Афина в начале дискуссии, давать возможность молодежи высказывать свое мнение и идеи, быть услышанными и включать молодежь в процессы, связанные с достижением ЦУР.
Emilia, thank you very much for all these insights. It's an amazing message which concludes this meeting with the voice of the youth. I hope that we will hear much more of those pledges during the upcoming Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. So we are looking also to the next week, the youth forum, but also the youth discussions at the forum itself. So one more time, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our meeting. Let me only highlight a few takeaways, focusing on the different SDGs that we are properly also prepared for the next week with the concrete messages to be inputted into the larger discussions on the digital taking place next week, but also going beyond to the level of the HLPF. So regarding the quality of education, we have definitely agreed that the COVID-19 pandemic has provoked a shock for education system, but it also opened the system to the possibility of the opportunities for digital education. The crisis encouraged ministries to put a special focus on digitalization in the new development of policies addressing digital and ICTs. With the increasing need of ICT, tech and digital skills, which is seen as the cross-cutting character of the future of work, it has been highlighted that governments are at the tipping point to redesign the education curriculums to include STEM and ICT education at the youngest age, starting with the elementary schools. This can be done, for example, by providing coding classes. But it's also important to include these subjects into extra curricular activities which offer more flexibility and adapted approach to the needs of each student. Developing ICTs and STEM skills is not only important for digital and ICT related work, but also for developing analytical skills. And that is necessary in most areas of work. For this to be enabled, there is a need to develop multi-action plans and apply a whole of ecosystem approach and to partner across different ministries, especially between ministries of ICTs and the education. But to use digital and ICT tools, connectivity and more precisely access and affordability of connectivity is of utmost importance to ensure that all are able to enjoy the full fruit of digital work. However, we have seen that geographical differences can refrain the spread of connectivity, especially in remote and rural areas, which further increases pre-existing inequalities. Not only access to the connectivity is important, but also adaptability for the end users. Such as the need to adapt to the content of online tools and services into the local language. The switch from analog to digital can also be particularly difficult for teachers, which have been highlighted of today as being on the front line. Hence, further support to teachers and educators need to be provided through providing skills that goes beyond basic digital skills, also through providing capacity building. We also hear that quality of education must look at the digitalization through the prism of quality instead of quantity. Tech should not be used for the sake of tech only, but for the purpose of enhancing learning. It should be seen as a tool that enhance every child learning goals. And for this, it's of prior importance to implement flexible and adaptive ICT tools and services. There is also necessity to implement standards of digital infrastructure in all schools and foster digital skills for all teachers, as it is the key for quality education. So for this to be possible, there is a need to invest in the infrastructure development, which can be done, for example, by the ITU UNICEF GIGA project, but also the need to collaborate with partners outside of the government, such as with the CSOs, private sector, parents and donors community, but also partners at the local level, such as municipality, which is especially important in the rural and remote context. In this context, the partnership buildings plays a quite important role, and that's why we one more time use this opportunity to call for the action and pledging at the Partners to Connect digital initiative, which you should definitely be part of in case we want to contribute to digital change. But let's take a look very quickly at the gender equality, SDG 5. Gender equality is still a topic of matters for policymakers, even in countries where the gender equality index is high. This gender inequality is particularly pronounced in the ICT and STEM fields. This inequality starts at a young age in the education field, which then spread into the labor market. And the interest of girls in is lower in this field, but even girls and young women choosing this professional experience and vertiers segregation and gender pay gap. This demonstrates that involvement of women and girls in the STEM and ICT sector does not translate into strong participation in such sector, with women ending up to have lower grade jobs and not properly represented in managerial positions or entrepreneurship sectors. To tackle this issue, it was recommended today to undertake a flexible approach, which also resonates with the recommendations put forward in the SDG 4, and especially a need to find balance between imposing education and raising interest in the ICT and the STEM topics. To undertake this flexible approach, it is recommended to introduce STEM education as a cross-cutting character of education curricula, but also to implement personalized competence-based approach, and not only in the formal education, but also in trainings and or extracurricular curriculum activities. Such personalized approach needs to include career guidance and self-confidence and self-perception trainings. Stereotypes is seen to be one of the major impediments of women and girls' inclusion in the ICT and STEM sectors. Panelists also put forward the importance of providing care supports. So ICT tools and services themselves can also be a solution to foster gender equality. Digital services and tools can provide a response to domestic violence, which was in particular importance during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the women suffering from the violence were more isolated than ever. The startup ecosystem and the tech industry can also support women that face domestic violence to be empowered, as they have established a culture with harmonized approach and where inequalities is being pointed at, which in turn have a positive effect for women empowerment. ICT can also support the elaboration of data-driven policies and programs, which have been highlighted as a key during the COVID-19 pandemic and will continue to be in the new normal. A positive effect of women and girls' empowerment in ICTs and STEM sectors, and to raise their interest is need to provide role models in this field. We have seen a great example with the network established by the RCC. With this, I would like to mention also the Girls in ICT celebration, which aims to provide the role models to foster girls and young women interested in this field. And we hope that many of you will be able to join the forces on the 28th of April this year, and encourage many stakeholders at the national, regional and global level to mark this important celebration in the calendars, and to make proper action to also engage the others. Ladies and gentlemen, so of course, the COVID pandemic exposed the inequalities that can be calibrated by the digital divide, but today's session gave us the recommendations to ensure that all can enjoy the full fruit of the digital society and economy, and to foster the use of technologies for good. One more time, we're very much impressed with the number of the examples used where the partnership responding to the call for supporting the implementation of the SDG 17 was very much visible, and we see that this is also the future to engage the new stakeholders who never were even thinking about being part of the larger community trying to advance digital development across the world. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, before concluding, I would like to still pass the floor to my colleague Elizabeth Turk for final words, and after this I will still say a few words. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Sorry, Yaroslav, you will have to do with me because Elizabeth unfortunately
Absolutely.
had another engagement, so she couldn't stay. So I will try quickly to wrap up the two segments on SDG 14 and SDG 15. SDG 14, as we said, looks at the conserving and the sustainability of ocean, seas, and marine resources. Countries are really encouraged to step up efforts in implementing digital solutions for sustainable use of resources underwater. And we recall the use of UN flags to provide an harmonized message standard to allow fishery management organizations to automatically access the electronic data from fishing vessels, such as vessel and trip identification, fishing operation, or fishing data. And coming from this standard, several systems were developed. For example, the vessel monitoring tools and the electronic reporting system, and countries are encouraged to implement these systems in order to help us keeping our resources and passing it to future generation. Marine ecosystems should be preserved also using ITC tools that are used for other that have other scope, like for example, in the case of connectivities, we have seen that we can use a solution already in place also for other scope. For example, through the sensor to preserve our environmental impact and of the human activities, and also as early warning in case of natural disasters. And government-led multi-stakeholder partnership, both at domestic and international level, are indispensable to achieve our goals. And if we can pass to SDG 15, and a strong link is here also with the pandemic, because if we preserve our life on land, we will also be able to fight viruses. And on this, I go back to the example I made on the support to the CITES Convention to try to avoid illegal trafficking of wildlife that could spread zoonosis and other viruses. And ITC is indispensable there to be able to exchange electronic certificate, and also this was also true for SDG 14. Check that what is reporting is real in trade transboundary, and on the trade transboundaries, if we look at e-waste, this ITC will be even more important to be used. Not only new technologies like AI, but also ADI is there to support us looking at efficient use of waste resources that can be recycled in a circular economy, and monitor the waste of chemical that can be very dangerous for our environment. And then finally, also using ITC for avoiding degradation of land through tools like geospatial tools that can support governments making informed decision. And all this information, of course, they need to be shared among partners and among countries. And with this, I think I wrapped up. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maria Rosaria. So let me, this brings us to the conclusions of this meeting. We have still 1 minute to conclude. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Digital Transformation Group for Europe and Central Asia, and all UN agencies involved in making this event happen, I would like to thank very much all participants for taking the time to be with us, to contribute, to listen and to spread the news, and also to act as the ambassadors in the upcoming regional forum. My sincere thanks to Elizabeth Turk for taking the time to join and to address the meeting. Also to our regional director for CIS, Natalia Mociu. Thank you very much, Maria Rosaria, for all your contributions. And also let me raise the round of the applause for those who are also passionately making sure that all content curation and also all other aspects are taken care of with the excellent results and with the input to the next week event. Sarah, thank you very much. Charles, thank you very much. Irina, thank you very much. Let me not also forget about mentioning our youth envoys who made a special efforts in order to bring the messages of the young generation, digital natives to these discussions, as well as interpreters, captioners, and we hope that next week we'll be able to see you at the series of different digital related events, which starts from Monday with the Youth Jam, but also with the peer learning session taking place on the 6th, as well as the special event on the digital inclusion in the morning. So there is a lot what expects you next week, but for now, we would like to thank you very much for being with us, and we hope to cooperate in the future on the digital for development. So let's partner to connect, and thank you very much and have a nice, lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Yaroslav, and thank you all. Bye-bye.